Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on May 7th, 2023. You're listening to the Theist Helpline. Your friendly and helpful hosts today are, in alphabetical order, Amy Newman, who is known for her trademark slogan, Sending Love, is a professional comedian and skeptic who hosts debates, interviews, and conversations on her YouTube channel. She also creates educational and other important content. X is a Tom Unboxes subscriber and former atheist community of Discord admin who enjoys long walks through evolutionary biology-inspired phenomena. I'm sorry about that. I had a web browser running in the background. So he's a community of Discord admin who enjoys long walks through evolutionary, biology-inspired computer science, archaeological, academic, biblical criticism, and so on. Jack Burton, it's all in the reflexes, is a self-described, middle-aged, college-educated nobody who drives the Pork Chop Express truck in his spare time. He's a deist and is mostly non-committal to philosophical stances. Jefferson Spatchcock is an atheist inquisitor and intellectual who has particular expertise in thoroughly analyzing and reviewing debates, often from the comfort of his genuine lazy boy chair. J.L. Warren is an atheist activist, educator, and entertainer. He runs the Bridge the Divide YouTube channel, where he addresses irrational beliefs, the irrational behaviors that often follow, the societal divides they create, and how those divides can be bridged with education, rationality, and reason. J. Mike is one of the co-hosts of the Talk Heathen show. King Xerxes is an atheist activist and political commentator who has extensive knowledge of the Holy Bible and Christianity and the history surrounding it. Mobarak Abusharifah is an ex-Muslim who grew up in Saudi Arabia with knowledge of Islam and world history. He's also a co-host on Peter DeTukker's YouTube show. Peter DeTukker is an atheist epistemologist from the Netherlands, inspired by Aaron Ra, Seth Anders, Anthony Magnabosco, and others. He started a YouTube channel that mainly focuses on religion, but he also hosts shows on other topics. I'm Randolf Richardson. I'm an atheist activist from British Columbia, Canada, and I advocate for the equality and normalization of people who don't believe in deities, which entails advocating for fair justice, freedom, and critical thinking for everyone. I'm also the founding president of the Canadian Atheists, a national organization that promotes atheism and agnosticism as culturally common aspects of Canadian society. Taco, our visionary organizer of the Theist Helpline, is a #1 Discord debater who has never lost a Discord debate in his life. TJump, Tom Jump, is the founder of an atheist church called the Church of the Best Possible World, which is based on his model of objective morality. It has the goal of doing what Abrahamic churches should be doing but are not, helping people by providing affordable housing. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and welcome everyone in our audiences on YouTube and Discord. It's great to have you all here. I see Amy has just joined us. Did anybody have anything they wanted to talk about briefly before we bring up our first guest?
I do. On the 11th of this month, me and Peter have a guest who is a Muslim who believes that Islam is match the science, and he have an interested take on reading the Quran. So if you join us on Gonna Go For It on the 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern, I think. That will be fun.
Great, thank you very much. And I neglected to mention earlier that you can find out more about our websites and links under the About Us section on theisthelpline.com, the website. So with that, I think we should bring up our first guest here, Mind Goblin. Welcome.
Wait, was somebody just talking? Because I couldn't hear anybody.
Oh yeah, we just did all the introductions. Welcome, Mind Goblin. How are you today? Thank you for joining us.
The pain of losing loved ones is something I have seen. So I know how you must have felt when they killed Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, you killed Jeffrey Epstein. How did you do it? I was really hoping we'd hear more about that. Okay. Hey, Taco, I noticed your picture
That was
has
interesting.
changed. Yeah, I noticed your picture has changed. What happened to you?
I forgot to change my name back to Taco before this show, but I have become Jesus.
Also, can I just make a point? Maybe it'll trigger some conversation from the crowd, but they love to go after someone who should have spent many, many years in jail for the horrible crimes that he committed, like Jeffrey Epstein. But then the moment that we talk about Andrew Tate was doing sex trafficking, and he had the same type of methodology of working with a woman to recruit another woman, they're like, but no, he's a brother in Islam. He could never do that. So anybody want to come on and defend Islam, Christianity, or Judaism, please come on.
So I invited one person up, but he hasn't said anything yet. Heckman, you there, man?
It looks like there's a few people waiting to come up.
Yep.
Go ahead, Taco.
Rickyism seemed very... Oh. Heckman put their hand back up. Guess not. And then joiverx.
Welcome, joiverx. How are you today?
Yeah.
I hope we're saying your name properly.
Oh yeah, you got it right.
What's going on?
What's on your mind?
On my mind right now, I think well, you mentioned Andrew Tate. He should obviously be in prison.
Indeed.
If you've seen the Vice
That's fair.
documentary, it's just facts, and the people saying otherwise, they're just coping.
He spoke about how he would use another woman to convince women who were hesitant about doing sex work, like they had fallen kind of in love with him, but they really didn't want to get into that industry. And yet what he would do was he would use another one of his women to hang out with them, get friendly with them, and then try and convince them to go into it. And so once again, that's exactly what Jeffrey Epstein did. That's how he had his woman recruit other girls. Both of them were scumbags, and I really have no crocodile tears for the first, and the other guy should be in prison. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he brainwashes 13-year-olds to agree with him, and gets the, average dumb.
So this is
dudes
kind of
to
off
think he's
topic.
right.
Do you believe in any gods or anything like that?
I do believe there is no gods, because there's no way we could actually guess the right god. The chance is like 0. And if you believe in
That's
any
fair.
gods, you're just stupid. Because
I
you
don't know if I
really
can
think
call them
that the
stupid,
god
but-
you guessed is correct. Out of all gods, and literally on Earth we have way more than one. So the chance of yours being correct is 0.
I think selfish would be a better term. Not necessarily stupid, right?
Can't reflect on themselves.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming up. We've got Rickyism, who looked like they wanted to debate Randolph.
Hello, Rickyism. How are you today? Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry, my mic was muted. Yeah, no, I was just sitting here. I got a question. It just popped up in my head. What do you guys think? How do I think of this? When someone says like they feel the Holy Ghost or like the Holy Spirit overcome them, like what do you think that is?
Psychology, like we know of certain phenomenon in the brain, certain kinds of illusions, delusions, misconceptions, fallacies, where people sense and experience spirits. It's probably a type 1 and type 2 error, which is a result of evolution. The fact that if in early human development you heard a rustle in the bushes and you thought it was a lion or a spirit or a ghost and you ran away, you were more likely to survive than if you were skeptical minded and said, I thought maybe it's just the wind, and stayed put and got eaten. Therefore, humans have a predisposition for hyperactive agency detection, where they think and feel that someone is watching them, that there are ghosts under the bed, things in the darkness, things that rustle the bushes. That's all it is.
That's fair. Well, God loves y'all.
What? I was going to ask him what he thinks it means, but that was an excellent answer, TJump. I agree with everything you just said.
Cool. We've got Glenda up next.
Yeah, how's it going? So I'm
Glenda
not arguing
XI.
from hello.
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry, you go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm not arguing from like an Abrahamic perspective, so I don't know if I'm like right here, but overall, like from more of a Indic or overall like spiritual view, I guess. Do you guys believe like in a soul?
I don't. I'm pretty sure nobody here does. But perhaps some clarity on what you mean by a soul would be important, and does it differentiate from spirits? Obviously, you're not talking about music from the 1970s.
No, not that. No. To be more specific, like your consciousness. Like, what do you guys think consciousness is?
I think that, well, the soul question, I think that they just misdefined soul as consciousness as soul, right?
I mean, it depends. I mean, you can see as like a soul as a higher control of your material self.
And
Or you could
so-
also call it consciousness.
I think they just misdefined it and added a bunch of stuff to it.
You said something interesting. You talked about the soul controlling consciousness. Do you think that consciousness needs to be controlled by something else, like a supernatural aspect of something, or like maybe you can delve into what you were aiming at with that statement?
No, because for me personally, it's like it's pretty fascinating to have something such as consciousness, like I'm myself and my experience, my perspective on life never really like the thing controlling me, or like what I am, like my experience, right? It never really changed even though my body changed. And it might just be an illusion that I am always the same, or like my consciousness is always the same. It might be illusion, but it feels like really real to me, So how do you guys tackle like the issue of, I mean, I guess it's more of a how do you call it, like mind like philosophy of mind, but I think it also comes back to like what a lot of people describe as God, or that soul is inherently connected to God.
If I could just say,
Go ahead, Amy.
there aren't souls. There were soul stones, but now they're useless like paperweights. We do have consciousness. In fact, consciousness, I would say it's a system of awareness. And we can tell this because you can be fully conscious, half conscious, you'd be kind of out of it, but you can also be not conscious. You can completely lose conscious activity. And we also have a bunch of things going on about us that aren't conscious. For example, our heart rate, which has nothing to do, even though it's still in the brain. And I think consciousness comes from the brain, because the only organisms that we seem to observe that are conscious are animals, which brings us back to the topic. I don't think that there is a God, because I see no reason why an organism would have a non-physical conscious anything. I don't know what that would even mean.
But how?
So why do you?
So for example, this is like a very like the philosophical like idea of like seeing stuff overall, right? Like Kant, in the sense of like, oh yeah, you see the world and it's like, how do you call it, all of the stuff you see, it's like processed by your brain, so it's inherently biased. But can you see the world as it truly is? So like, do you truly know if like how a tree feels like? Because I also cannot prove that, like I also cannot be in your conscious. I don't know how you experience Earth. I don't know how it is to be you. So I cannot prove like your consciousness in a way, and I also cannot prove the tree's consciousness. But we inherently call it like still consciousness in humans. But I don't know if you are real. Like I don't know if you also see the world, or if it's just my perception, or like, you know, you being like an NPC in life, you know. So
I think, you know, like you're covering quite a few topics here now, and they're kind of commonly discussed in philosophy. So it's great that you're raising them. I want to go back to this point that you're trying to differentiate between soul and consciousness, and I'm wondering how you arrived at this idea for yourself that the soul is separate from consciousness. I don't have any sense of there being a soul. Consciousness is just consciousness to me. I am my own master, and it's up to me, solely up to me to, without the pun intended there, to explore being my own master, and how far I can take my own sense of what I think is free will. But I'm curious how you came to take a portion of your consciousness and say, oh no, that's a soul, that's got mastery over me, and like where you draw the line and how you can differentiate that. How did you come to all of that kind of thinking? I'm very curious about your thoughts on that.
I think, I mean, it is hard to say overall because it's also like a different perspective type stuff. But for example, when you're drunk, right? Your conscious experience changes, but you're still you and you're still aware of you. But it also depends if you call that soul. Then, for example, Heraclitus said that if you're drunk, your soul becomes wet, and he prefers dry souls. So it's like, it's either the idea of like consciousness just being drunk, or if your entire soul is drunk, or if it's both the same thing. I am not quite sure. I don't know.
Do you mind if I just push back a little on feelings, or maybe just ask you, because the way I look at feelings is they are labels that we put around data. For example, it's raining outside, and you could say, how do I feel about the fact that it is raining outside? And so when you say drunk, this is a type of brain state that once again happens in animals, but it would be kind of silly to say, can a tree be drunk? And so I would then ask you, what do you mean by a god? Do you mean that you believe in a god, or do you just believe in souls? Are you just saying that it's our consciousnesses that are some sort of supernatural?
I think, I mean, you could say that the soul is something, like, I guess I'm more of a like pantheist in a way, or like I approach it as like, you know, like in Hindu thought, it's either like Shiva or Brahman, where the entire universe is just like all energy, all existence is like from, or it is God in a way, and your soul is like undieable, and it's the essence of this universe, or like it's kind of like that's like energy in the universe itself that's like indestructible, unsplittable and such.
Consciousness? Oh, let me tell you, it could be wiped out quite easily. I don't
Yeah,
want
but
it to
that's,
be. I want everyone here to have a very long life, but just pointing that out.
yeah, but like how do you know, like, you know, like how do you know what happens like after death, or while you're, you know, unconscious, or, you know, because like it, if no soul exists, like why aren't we just like material robots that run around? Like why do I feel stuff?
Well,
So
oh no,
I have a quick question. So if someone, you say it, you reflect your consciousness, that is your soul.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if someone, we know it happened that if someone have a severe trauma to their brain, their consciousness, the way they look at the world, the way they feel, all of it change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
but
does
there's still
that mean
the,
does that mean they have a different soul in? Because it could change 180%, just goes all the way to the other side.
I mean, it's still, I mean, I haven't gotten this brain damage, right? So I cannot like confirm it on myself, but I think there's still like this feeling of living yourself, what you are experiencing right now, you seeing the world and stuff. I think that stays the same. I think it's just your behavior and overall like attributes being different, but you still are like the same person. Like the same soul is controlling you, or like controlling your material body.
But it changed the person. Went from someone who's very nice, very friendly, to someone who's very mean. So it's
I
not
mean,
just like, yeah, we're talking about the people who could like change their after the trauma. They will change the way they behave, the way they dress, the way even they talk.
yes, but I mean, you were a child, right? And as a
Yeah.
child, you liked, I don't know, probably liked other stuff than you like nowadays, but it's still the same experience, right? Like you still feel that you are in control of yourself, like the same thing that, you control the body that changed, yeah, but you as a controller, that is the same, you think, right?
Well, not necessary, because we know that the brain kind of still develop until the age of 25. So by the age of 25, a lot of things have changed in your brain. So you might have liked
Yes, but
something. So
it's still the
like
same thing. Oh, sorry, you
so
go ahead.
I talking. So what is the soul? Is it your conscious? Because the conscious could be changed, like the way you look at the world could change, or is it a separate entity from my brain?
Soul
Because
is
consciousness
like,
related to brain activities.
for example, like a video game, right? The consciousness, it could be like a different like graphical filter. It could be a new like field of view. It could be, graphical glitches. But the player who plays the video game stayed the same, no matter the settings you changed in the video game.
So there is a separate thing that kind of control my consciousness.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, depends. Yeah, what you define consciousness and soul as. Yeah.
So my brain activity is not connected to my soul.
No,
Then
it's the
how,
What's
will
the
of it.
evidence? I'm just curious. What's the evidence for that? Like, I hear you saying you have this
I
belief.
once, how do you call it? There's, I forgot his name. I have to find him. But there's a neuroscientist who made like an experiment. That's like how I've been told it. Like, because it's hard to like, metaphysics is hard to, put evidence forward because it's metaphysics. But when it comes to, I've seen, I guess the will, like what will is, could be described as soul, because a neuroscientist, one of the earliest neuroscientists, I forgot his name, he conducted a experiment where he analyzed the brain, and he asked the patient to raise his arm, and he raised his arm, and then he said, "Oh, what happened?" And then the patient said, "Yeah, I willingly raised my arm, and my arm raised." And then he analyzed this, like, how do you call it, like the brain, like what type of neurons fired and such while raising the
Can I?
hand. Wait, actually, let me
Yeah, no,
let me.
finish.
Okay. And then he basically put like electrolytes on, like he put his brain under electricity, and that also raised his hand. And then he asked the patient, "Oh, what happened? My arm raised, but I didn't raise my arm." Even though the same like neurons fired, or the brain was stimulated, it still wasn't the intent of the patient to raise the arm. So this neuroscientist concluded to be, like he said, he argued in a dualistic matter where you have the material, but you also have a willing stuff, like
Yeah,
a soul.
the evidence doesn't support that. I get what you're saying, but that's like, okay, the instruments, first of all, that they're using to measure the spikes are insufficient.
That's actually false. So there's different parts of the brain that activate when you do any given action. The most latest research in neurology is on this subject is that when someone is given a choice between A and B and they're asked to choose between A and B, the brain decides before they realize they choose. So someone will pick B and say, "What happened?" And it says, "Oh, I picked B." Actually, that's false. The neurologist can look at your brain and know what you're going to pick before you pick it and before you realize you've picked it. So we know that's false. That's the consensus in every field of brain science, neurology, psychology, cognitive science, philosophy of mind, every single one of them. Consciousness is a physical process in the brain. There's no evidence of anything else. And it's not that it's hard to produce evidence of metaphysics. It's just there isn't any. Metaphysics would be really easy to produce evidence for if it existed. But since none of the models make testable predictions, they're just garbage models. So the problem isn't that it's hard to make evidence of metaphysics. The problem is that people who want to believe there's more stuff than physics just have none. And so the consensus of every academic field is consciousness is a physical process in the brain, and there's no evidence of anything else at all other than people's imagination. They like to just imagine there's other stuff when there isn't.
And that raises another question. I get what you mean. Like I haven't looked that deep into like that this neuroscientist. I just knew about that story. But let's say one thing. But before, like when you said, oh yeah, do you believe in free will then? If your brain already knows like what it's gonna do?
No.
You don't
There's
believe
no
in
such
free
thing
will?
as free will isn't even a coherent concept.
Okay. The second thing
If it's random,
is-
it's not free. It's just random, right? So saying that there's no determinism isn't going to get you out of the idea that there is something that's causing your will other than whatever you consciously think.
Mm-hmm. But the other thing I have to ask is when it comes to how to call it, because you said like metaphysics is not real, right? Or I guess we don't have like any hidden
What?
models around it.
Well, metaphysics is just the fundamental nature of reality. Physicalism, materialism, those are metaphysics.
Yes. But for example, in science, right? There was this brief period where people were like, "Oh yeah, we can discover everything," you know?
Well,
I mean,
before you go on, very specifically, what he was saying, and I agree with him, is that there is no evidence besides the physical for anything conscious.
of course not. No, like it's like it's like a video game that tries to like prove that there's a player. Like you cannot escape the, or I mean that's the question, right? Because people argue, yeah, if you're enlightened, maybe you can, or maybe with like drugs or something, if you like experience ego death, you can. But it also is the question of if you fall into this trap where the material is kind of like, like just giving you the feeling of escaping yourself, but you still like are in yourself,
Well, that's not a problem. So if science could test it if it was real, and so it's not real, it has nothing to do with this problem of people saying you can meditate on it. Like that's all gibberish. If it was real, science could test it.
I mean, isn't science trying? Because one thing I want to get to is like, because every truth, every fact, or every solution just gives you way more like questions, right? That's why, like I mean, Socrates said, "I know that I know nothing," or like, that every time, like the more knowledgeable you are, the more questions you have. So the question is, and I heard like Stephen Hawking talking about it, like when you find a theory for everything, you look into God's mind. And I think, like, do you believe there's like one truth that like has no, like the eternal truth, like there is no more answers to it?
Arby's
Like
has
questions it.
meats. Oh, okay, differently.
Wait, what?
Reality exists. There you go.
Yes, but the essence of reality, like, is there truth to
Yes, there is a
understand
single
everything?
essence of reality. Yes.
I mean, I don't know if you get what I mean, because for example, like, how do you call it? Like, we have questions, right? We have many questions in science, in everything. For example,
I
like, yeah,
I think you're confusing epistemology and ontology. Questions and how we know stuff is epistemology. The way things are is ontology. There is a fundamental truth to ontology, regardless of whether or not we can know anything about it.
Mm-hmm. So
The
Yeah.
consensus of physicists, neuroscientists, etc., is that none of the things that are claimed about what are so-called souls match with what we know about how the brain actually gives rise to all of our conscious experience and human behavior. Like the stuff Mobarak was asking you before, you know, if you change your brain, if you change your brain in some way and the person changes as a result, that's going to be true for everything about people, such that we have a general principle called supervenience, which means any change in the brain is going to cause a change in your mental experience, and any change in your mental experience is going to be accountable for
Is anybody
by
saying
some
anything?
change.
You can't hear him? Or is it just everyone quiet?
We can hear him.
Yeah, we can hear him.
Can you hear me?
Who is it? Because I can't hear him.
TJump, can you hear me?
å½µæ.
X?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you not hear me?
Refresh again.
Okay, anyway. So the principle of supervenience is that we know enough about what goes on in brains to be able to address, like the neuroscientist is looking at which neurons are firing, what's going on in the brain when some mental experience happens. And we don't find any phenomena, contrary to what you were claiming, we don't find any phenomena in our mental experience that isn't accompanied by neural changes in the brain. So it's very difficult to support the conclusion, if not impossible, that something's going on in the brain that's not to do with the neurons there. You understand that?
I get what you mean, but it's also like, because I think the main reason why like people try to search for stuff like that is just that, like, you know, we have so many answers to stuff, and we as like very curious minds, very curious people, you know, try to like go beyond what we know in a way of like achieving other stuff, you know. Or like,
I don't know what you're saying. I think
what I'm saying is like
the original claim is, you said that we have souls and that the souls are who we are and that the soul is not accountable.
It depends what
for
we
by the
are.
brain.
I mean,
In fact, can I ask two specific questions? One, I think, will be honest or lead to an honest answer. The other maybe doesn't matter. I won't preamble. Consciousness. It seems to be like you seem to equate it with the soul. And I think there is maybe a slight differentiation between something that's conscious and something that's sentient. Something that's sentient to me, it doesn't just have the lights on. It has thoughts and feelings, and it is making choices. But all of this stuff, they are all physical. They are all made of matter or energy, which is just, you know, electrical circuits in our neurons. So I guess my question to you, what the heck is the difference between consciousness and a soul?
I mean, I get what you mean. Like, it's hard to say that, like, you know, because it's like a mind experiment, right? Which I already like said, like, a tree, like, is there like a tree experience? Can you play the tree video game and feel how a tree feels? Or is a tree just like a background object that just has
the things that
it's stuff, you know?
The things that we find in brains that accompany the mental experiences that we call consciousness for ourselves are neurons. The things that are equivalent to that in other animals that behave similarly to us enough that we think that they also have a similar mental experience, like primates, is they also have neurons. Trees have nothing equivalent to neurons. It doesn't mean that trees can't be adaptive and respond to some stimuli, or like use chemicals to signal other trees, like to, you know, respond a certain way. We're not saying that they can't have some adaptive learning behavior or some pseudo intelligence in some kind of like survival capacity for complex stimuli. But there's a huge gap between saying some system is slightly intelligent or adaptive in a very limited way and saying that it's conscious when it doesn't have anything remotely equivalent to neurons. So we have no reason to say that trees are conscious or anything that doesn't have neurons, so far as we know.
Furthermore,
doesn't mean that there couldn't be an equivalent to neurons that does an equivalent job, but the things that make us conscious appear to be the complex firings of neurons, And we can account for that in great detail. I mean, I could bore you by explaining to you how the neurons do it, but we actually know why neurons give us conscious experience to a large extent in a lot of different aspects of how they work. We don't think there's anything equivalent, then it wouldn't have consciousness.
One thing though is I have neurons, you have neurons, but I still don't know how it feels to be you, you know?
Actually, we're getting there. So just to give you an idea, the most recent research went from being able to tell what word you're thinking with like a 70 or 80% accuracy from 64 EEGs, which are, you could just buy them yourself and do this experiment at home if you have about $1,000, to now we can reconstruct entire sentences continuously of your inner monologue of thought, whether you're thinking words out loud, reading words, saying them inwardly. We actually can read your literal thoughts with a high degree of accuracy for entire sentences.
Yeah,
which is rather terrifying, right? Because it means
I
people
get
can
what you
literally
mean.
read
I
your
get what
mind.
you mean.
Yes,
you can do
but
that.
we do know
I cannot
what you're thinking.
be you. You know.
Yes.
Who cares?
Like, I cannot.
Why do you think that matters?
It matters because
that's just to say that we're separate. But of course we're separate.
Yeah, we're separate.
We're not going to be able to find something about the brain that can't be understood just because it happens to be happening to somebody else isn't saying anything profound.
But the thing is too, like, are we separate? Because you are in my cosmos too, you know, like you are part of what I experienced, you know, you're part of my reality. And same as my mirror, like my mirror image is part of reality. But I still don't know how it feels to be like in your cosmos, you know.
So here's
but we do have reason to think that you have feelings similar to us because you have neurons. We don't even have to like check to ask you, hey, do you feel this? Do you feel that? Because we can see the neural activity, the correlates, and we know enough about those kinds of correlates to infer that you are having an experience like ourselves. We don't see that in trees. That's why we do not think trees are conscious. We don't have to ask the tree to find out. We can just look and say there's no correlates to consciousness. It's not conscious.
That's what I mean. There's like the difference between consciousness and the soul, where maybe maybe not conscious, but the object still has a soul or an essence to it.
But you're just saying to me the soul is that we're different. But what sounds to me is that we're different is that we just each have separate consciousnesses. And the word I would sell you on that is overlooked is awesome. Consciousness is pretty cool. It's amazing, and it's us, so we're a little bit biased to it, and we should enjoy it, and we should be empathetic and kind and fair to other consciousnesses. But that doesn't mean it's supernatural or that it is the building block, the essential foundation of the cosmos, because clearly the universe doesn't seem to have that big of a bias towards it, because it took billions of years to even have a conscious creature. It took billions of years to even have life before that. And so we're one branch of it. It's cool. It's amazing.
Yes, but what would the universe be without our consciousness? It would not be. It could not reflect itself.
But it's been doing that just fine. It doesn't seem to care.
Yeah, but if you differentiate between, I mean, that's the thing, right? Was there ever an unconscious universe?
Almost certainly before the development of the building blocks of life and before the development of things like neurons that have enough complexity to create enough feedback loops to do things like the way our brain does it. Yeah, there was a time before any consciousness, and that time might resume again if we do things wrong and other species in the universe do things wrong. There might be no more consciousness left. So yes, it's very important that we value consciousness, that we preserve it, but there's no reason to think that something like what did you say your belief was?
Me? Just generally like Indic and also like Heraclitus.
But you said you're something like a pantheist?
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, it's very broad, right? What a pantheist is.
Sure. There's a difference, I think, between like what Amy's trying to say, which is that we can be admirers of and appreciators of the awesomeness that has emerged. And taking your emphasis on and valuing importance on something that's emerged, and just sort of extrapolating from there and saying the whole universe must be for the purpose of, or exist because of, or essentially that the universe's purpose is that this thing be the case. Like, imagine a person who really values Arby's, and to them Arby's is the end point of history, right? They write an essay called, the end of history, and say Arby's is the final point in the history of the universe and all civilization. Yeah, but by Michel Arbyuma, right? And he says, everything exists for the purpose of Arby's. That's the most important value in the universe, right? And everyone is to be judged by their alignment with Arby's or something like that. Well, he's just picked something, which a lot of other people are going to think, what's so special about Arby's, right? Now, we're not going to be able to convince him that Arby's isn't special, but we might be able to convince him that the universe doesn't revolve around Arby's, because it seems like there's nothing about the universe just has to be that way just so that Arby's could exist. It might be the case that Arby's is able to exist because there's a lot of other things that happen to line up a certain way. But the universe isn't here just for consciousness. Consciousness might be the coolest thing that's ever emerged in it. There might be something even cooler that's different than what we call consciousness now, that's down the pipe, right? Something cooler could emerge yet still, but emphasizing whatever you currently value as like the universal thing that the universe is made of, or something like the universe must be conscious before even life evolved or something. There's no reason to think that. It's just hypervaluing something, maybe for very good reason. It's very valuable, but thinking the universe exists for that purpose doesn't make sense.
Actually, thanks for first of all, thanks for just talking, because I actually got a new thought now. But I want to challenge this thought now too, because I'm a very
Oh, I'm just saying, go ahead. Let's hear your new thought.
Yeah,
sounds interesting. Yeah.
So you guys know anything about Heraclitus? No. Okay, so basically, he's the kind of the first dude to point out there's one good quote by him where he says the uphill and the downhill is one and the same, because it's the same path, right? If you go up or if you go down, it's just describing your first stand, your how do you call it? It's relative, right? It's relative if you were standing below first or if you're standing above first, but it's the same path. It's just a different description of that path. So it's this unity of opposites, right? And if there's an conscious, then there's also unconscious, right? We can agree on that, or we agreed on that, right? Humans or mammals or insects maybe are conscious, and then a tree or a brick, I think we could say a brick doesn't have consciousness. So do you have conscious and unconsciousness, and they're inherently intertwined because. But then also there's no. There is the thing though.
No, so
the unconscious.
You can have everything in reality.
But let me speak.
I just want to because everything in reality could just be not conscious, or everything in reality could be conscious. They don't need to both exist. You're not right to say that Heraclitus is wrong when he says they're both intertwined in that way. No, there can just be one thing and not its opposite.
But look, for example. By definition, an unconscious thing cannot reflect on itself. So we need consciousness to reflect the unconscious.
No, it can just be there. The entire universe could be unconscious. Nothing conscious exists.
But I'm conscious. I can reflect on myself. I'm existent. You denying consciousness?
Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden could have a bad day and all consciousness on the planet Earth could cease, right?
Yes, but then is the universe real?
But I would also delineate between conscious, unconscious, and having no conscious properties at all. And so you can be conscious. You could also, or we could all be hit with a dodgeball and become unconscious. And a brick has no conscious properties. What is conscious about a brick?
No, I didn't. I'm just saying, I understand the differentiation part between unconsciousness and no conscious like inherent thing.
You're asleep, you're unconscious, but you still have a brain. A rock can't be conscious. So like,
But in my
sleeping
sleep, I don't
versus-
reflect on myself.
like dreaming, you're still unconscious if you're dreaming.
Yeah, but the dreaming period is only like the.
It's not It's not relevant to the argument. The argument
No,
is there can be non-conscious things easily, and they're not contingent on conscious things. Our ability to reflect doesn't matter. Consciousness is not important. It doesn't make a difference. It's
No,
irrelevant.
but look, when I'm sleeping and I'm not dreaming, I'm literally like a brick.
No, in fact, you actually have certain feelings like time being moved. It's why you have a sense of time if you're just sleeping.
Yeah, but to me, I'm a brick.
It's great. So I don't think it has anything to do with the original argument.
It
But why
does.
do you think a brick has the ability to be conscious? Like that's the
No,
point.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the inherently the unconscious needs the conscious to tell the unconscious that it's unconscious because it
Wow.
cannot do it on itself.
No. Your consciousness, when it's awake, does things. When it's not awake, it's not telling itself anything. It doesn't become unconscious because the consciousness tells it so. Consciousness just ceases because it's a physical function in the brain, and when the physical
No,
function stops,
I'm not
it
saying to
ceases.
sleep. I'm saying to a brick. Like the
Both.
brick doesn't reflect on itself, and a
Both.
sleeping
It does not have
person
the
But it
doesn't.
consciousness
should.
process. It does not have the consciousness process. It's not telling it anything. No consciousness is telling it anything. It just doesn't have the conscious process. Problem solved.
Yeah, but then it needs a conscious thing
Nope.
to call it a brick, to call it a thing. Else
Nope.
it wouldn't. It would cease to exist if it
Nope.
couldn't reflect on itself.
Nope. So things are things regardless of whether or not people call them things. Things existed, like the moon existed before anybody called it the moon.
Yeah, but the moon was not aware of itself. The universe was not aware of itself. It was not real to
Doesn't
itself
matter.
until
Doesn't matter.
consciousness
It's
came around.
cool that the universe has awareness in it, but it's not required and it could go away, and we should value
Yeah, but
our
then
ability
the
to
universe
observe it.
would cease to exist because it
No.
wouldn't
No.
reflect on itself.
There are
Can I-
lots of things in the
It's
universe
Hegel.
that exist. Hegel's an idiot. There are lots of things in the universe that exist that no one knows about. Like there are rocks on Alpha Centauri that exist that no one knows about, and they exist just fine with no one knowing about them.
Well, but do you know they exist? I mean, that's
Nope.
like the.
I just
I
want
guess-
to point out that everyone asks why is brick, but no one asks how is brick.
True. That's a yeah, no, but like yeah, like how does a brick feel like? Can you achieve that like idea?
Linda,
think
I
we're-
think it seems to me that you're putting a lot of importance on perception of things to justify that they exist. And what TJump was alluding to is that they exist regardless of whether we perceive them. Why do you think that our perception of things is so important to their existence?
Well, because then we are aware of their existence. But that's the thing, right? Because we cannot prove or disprove this because we cannot just have a state of non-consciousness and just be like, oh, how does stuff feel like now? Because then if we ask the question, we're conscious again. It's like an
What-
inherent like non-provable thing.
We
in
already,
every way.
we already
What,
disproved this.
what do you think about things existing before you were born?
I
You
mean,
couldn't perceive them at that point.
Yes, but I can perceive them now as a past thing.
That doesn't make them. And so, if you were never born, are you implying that they never would have existed?
To me now.
Do you know? Okay, this is good.
And I
because,
am
you know-
like my deception is what I see of the universe.
Oh, okay. So this is about your perception. You're not saying that your perception of it magically makes it all exist. You're just saying this is only your point of view. Okay, I'm sorry if I misunderstood earlier.
Yeah.
So,
So,
what
yeah.
about the universe before life?
Well, I don't know. It didn't reflect itself on me, but maybe it did. Maybe my soul
what
was
does it-
already there, and the characteristic of my soul was already there.
What
Maybe
what
there's
does
a
it mean to you
Glenda-ish
when you say
person.
Yeah.
With all due respect, just saying maybe, like there's no reason to just say maybe and not have any support behind anything. Like we're kind of
No,
just meandering through maybes.
what do you
You've
call
got a
it?
lot of gaps in your worldview that you can't fill in.
Sure, yeah. I don't know.
So
And
I don't know.
if we could return to some original claim that you were making, are you making the claim that you can support the existence of a soul? Because it doesn't seem like you've had any evidence or arguments against the consensus of neuroscientists and others that there's no need for a soul to explain human behavior and that the brain is sufficient to do so. Or is your claim something about pantheistic God? So far, all we heard you say is that you think that the universe somehow is like very attached to or revolves around consciousness, but that's been extremely vague and hard to pin down. I don't hear any specific claim that we can pin down other than the soul stuff, which we've, I think, addressed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's probably very, how to call it? It comes from this point of view of me knowing myself, and it's very magical. It's a very magical thing, and I just feel like I cannot describe it through materialistic means.
But you could have so like a lot of people have a spiritual practice or an exploration of consciousness or whatever it is that you want to do without having a supernatural belief attached to it. What you can explore between the confines of your own skull, your psychological experience, can be a very deep and fulfilling thing to explore without drawing irrational conclusions from it about the nature of the universe, right?
I think
So
one thing
what makes you think that you need to take your psychological journey and extrapolate and make sort of baseless claims about the universe?
Because inherently, I think a lot of atheists or agnostics, I don't know, like I think one inherent thing is how do you call it? This idea of like that God is something. And I don't think it's really true. I think like what gods or like God or gods are kind of made for. Like I see it as a metaphorical thing. For example, the essence of for example, like the essence, like Greek dudes, right? They were like, "Oh, hey, I'm drunk." That means like Dionysus, who invented wine, kind of takes over my body. And this entire like metaphorical thing, it describes a thing. For example, in Hinduism, no real Hindus believe that like the gods look like this or like a god looks like this. They don't describe Shiva as having blue, like this and this facial
Blue
features
skin,
and
yeah.
and this aspect. No, and that's the reason actually why they carry so many things. No, that's the reason why they have so many arms. It's not really there for the arm's sake. It's just there to hold the symbols.
Okay, so I could tell you the atheists don't believe that gods and goddesses are things. That's definitely out of our purview. It's usually the theists who do this, and many of us are going based on what theists tell us of their deities. Their god is this, their goddess is that, and they're telling us that we should believe, and that's what's going on. And the problem that we keep running into is that nobody's been successful at providing some convincing argument for why these deities are part of reality. And that's kind of where the struggle is, and I think that's kind of what you're noticing there. So when atheists are talking about God as a character or a goddess as a character that interacts with reality, we're trying to respond to people who say that these characters are real, and we're trying to understand it and trying to find some aspect of it that is real. And so far the problem is that, like, what theists run into a lot is that a lot of us are not just taking them on their word for it. We want something that fits with reality, that comports to reality. So this comes across as materialism sometimes, or empiricism, or some kind of logical argument on it, depending on what the criteria is. But again, we're not finding it. So I think that's what you're noticing when you're talking about atheists are talking about deities as things.
No, actually, no. I think no, misspoke there. I think I think
Okay.
a lot of atheists believe that all theists believe that God, in a sense, is a thing.
It sounds more like what you're
believe-
describing is atheopaganism. You're basically saying that you think it's interesting and worthwhile to talk about gods in a metaphorical sense, which is compatible with being an atheist. There's a term for it. It's called atheopaganism.
Let me speak. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, for example, I don't really believe in, how do you call it, like Shiva as a being. I believe, like, as a real being, as described as this. I just believe in symbols. And these symbols carry the essence of what this deity is, or what God is.
A concept.
And I think one of
that it's metaphor for.
I think there's one big essence, and this is like where Heraclitus comes in really big, is he says that everything is made out of fire, right? And basically God is fire. Because, and it's also like the Hindus also say, like the Indic, like I think it's over like an Indic thing. Change is the essence of the universe. The inherent, and that's what fire means to Heraclitus. Fire is inherently always changing. You cannot have the fire, because if you look at the fire, it already like disappeared, and there's new stuff, like new, burning material coming out. So it is a symbol of change. Fire is.
He's talking about flow. He's saying everything flows, not everything is fire, right? The words are panta re, right? Everything flows. That's a quote that's attributed to him. So the problem is, look,
in one fragment, like a few fragments, he goes into fire, describing that fire is like the inherent. It doesn't matter, flow or change. It's the same thing, right? So everything is change. Everything is fire. Everything is a river.
Right. Heraclitus was amongst many pre-Socratics that were hypothesizing about the fundamental nature of reality. There's another guy named Leucippus that everything came from water. And there was a guy named Democritus who said, no, they're all wrong. Everything is made of fundamental, indivisible, subatomic, or what he used the term for just atoms, particles that have some logic by which they interact with each other and so on, which was sort of predicting the modern atomic theory in a lot of ways.
But he's because now we got quantum physics, and it goes.
Yes, there's something more fundamental than that. But the point is that all these people had ideas kind of in the right direction, in the sense that they were asking questions, but none of their theories were sort of empirically matched with what we actually found out. But they hinted and sort of helped us figure it out along the way. We should be grateful for their contribution to sort of the history of thought, but you're not going to be able to do any actual science with Heraclitus. You're not going to be able to find out how the world really works with it. It's not made of fire.
Right.
No, it's just not made of fire.
But
right? It's
yeah, but what is fire? What is the essence of fire? It's change.
So
it's gibberish. By today's standards, we know so much more about what's going on that saying everything is fire is not meaningful.
No, but I think inherently Heraclitus was right about like.
No, he's not. He's wrong. He's obviously wrong.
No, he's not.
He's clearly provably wrong. He's garbage. Everybody thinks he's garbage in philosophy. Everybody thinks he's garbage in physics. Nobody takes him seriously because it's garbage. The way to differentiate good theories and bad theories. Good theories can make novel, testable predictions about the future and get them right. So predict things we don't know yet and get it right. Heraclitus can't do that. He just uses a bunch of fuzzy words to reinterpret data we have, which is like many, many theories that do that. They're all garbage. We don't care about any of those. So until you have a model that can accurately predict the future, get things about the future right, then your model is garbage. And that's how we differentiate good, meaningful models from gibberish.
TJump, I think you should untangle your soul from Apollo.
Gibberish.
Or as a certain judge said in the TV show Boston Legal, jibber jabber.
Anyway, it doesn't sound like you believe in any supernatural beings, which are actually gods. You just believe in like metaphors or something.
I do believe in the symbolism of things, like the essence.
Symbolism is not the same thing as ontology.
The essence is
supernatural
what God
beings.
is.
We move on now.
Right. But you're just talking about a metaphor at this point. Yeah, let's move on.
Anyways, yeah, nice talking to you.
It was nice talking.
And yeah, maybe Nietzsche was right, but also Nietzsche went crazy on Dionysus, So maybe we should strike a balance between Apollo and Dionysus.
Have some predictions or go home.
Still a good conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. That was interesting. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
It's not even wrong, so that's something.
And if anybody else would like to come up, feel free to raise your hand.
Well, what's going on, guys?
Oh, hi, Castle.
Hello, CastleKingSide. How are you doing, sir?
Greetings this beautiful Sunday morning. How you guys doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
Oh, I can't hear.
Well, I've just been listening to you guys talk, and I was curious. You call it the Theist Helpline. You're trying to help people not believe in God?
Yes, sir.
We're trying to help people with their understandings of things and the various ideas that they come up with. And sometimes the ideas we're hoping will be convincing. But of course, we're willing to work with people to test ideas as well. Did you have an idea in mind?
Yeah. Did you know that God is working in this chat right now?
Do you have any evidence?
Yeah, I have the evidence.
Does he have mod powers?
Does he have mod powers?
Ask it for a friend.
Moderating powers. The power to control users.
God could change any one of our lives in an instant.
Can
God
or
can send the
will?
right person your way to change your life in an instant, for
Okay,
the
what's the
good
evidence?
or for the bad.
Okay, what's the
You
evidence?
know that.
Okay, what's the evidence?
What do you mean? You can walk outside right now and get hit by a drunk driver.
Okay, but what is the evidence God can do anything or exists?
I'm saying God isn't within all of us. The
That's
breath of
evidence of
life.
alcoholism.
We all share it.
What is your evidence that statement
The
is
fact
true
that you
and
can
not
have a
something you made
conversation
up?
right now is my evidence.
That's
You're
not
able to
evidence of
use
God.
your brain that God gave you
That's not
to
evidence
formulate
of God.
thoughts so that you can speak words. That's my evidence. That's my proof.
Why do you think that indicates a God and not nature?
Because you're a bag of flesh and bones, and yet you animate, yet you breathe, you work. Your brain works. Your brain functions.
And why do
You're
you
a
think that's
bag of
evidence of a
meat and
God?
bones.
You
Why
pay
do you think-
taxes.
Why do you think that's evidence of a God and not evidence of nature?
Because what else could animate a bag of bones?
Nature.
Nature.
Yes.
Castle,
That's
Castle,
what you call God?
Castle, were you listening earlier when we were talking about how neurons work and how we've studied those? And we know enough to say that we're not just meat and bones, we're meat, bones, and neurons. The neurons are the part that make us conscious. And we study that in what's called neuroscience. You understand that part?
What part of the neurons became the conscience?
The part that surrounds the outer layer of the brain is called the neocortex. And the neocortex accounts with a whole bunch of columns of neurons of about a few thousand neurons each, and there's many millions of those columns. Each of those cortical columns specializes to handle one of the types of stimuli that we experience. So that's when we have a certain thing that you do or you experience, and certain things light up. Generally, we're talking about those points on the neocortex. So that's the part of the brain that's special about humans and primates that earlier species didn't have. And it's probably what accounts for our unique conscious experience.
Just humans and primates have this? Or what
No,
about
probably
the other mammals?
A lot of
What
other
about the
mammals.
dolphins
You know,
and the
a
whales?
lot of mammals too. Yeah, I just said that it's most similar.
What about the reptiles? Do they have this ability to think too?
Probably, yeah, because we observe some of the stuff in birds who are descendants of reptiles, and like a common ancestor in like the Triassic, with the earliest common ancestor between us being called Cylodonts, which is a common ancestor between reptiles and mammals.
Cylodons, that almost sounded like the Slee Stacks from Land of the Lost.
That's nice. What's your evidence?
My evidence is you. When you look in the mirror, who do you see? You see a
Myself.
creation.
No.
You were created. Obviously.
How is that evidence of God? All of that can be explained
God
by
is
nature.
the ultimate creator.
No,
God
he's not.
created all of this. He
No, he's
created
not.
this whole foundation for us to play out here
No,
on Earth.
That's your imagination. You imagine God did those
Imagination? No,
things.
you're a part of my imagination now? I think I'm talking to you, unless
No.
you're some kind of clever AI bot I don't know about.
You imagine God did these things. Now I want to know why you think your imagination describes reality. So you need now to show me why this thing in your imagination that you call God, which you imagine created the universe, actually did it. What is your evidence he actually did it? And this isn't just a figment of your imagination.
Did you know that your thoughts become your words become your actions become your legacy?
Okay,
You're
how
going
is
to be
this
remembered
evidence?
for all the things that you said and did in this life.
Okay,
Someone's going to remember.
How is this evidence that the thing in your
That's
imagination that
my
you call
evidence.
God?
That's my
How?
evidence. Because
How?
God spoke everything into existence
I don't
with
think
the
you're
simple
understanding.
word of God.
So
Everything
the
became-
idea, just to clarify, CastleKingSide, the idea that God speaks things into existence actually doesn't originate in the Bible. It originates with Ptah, and Ptah was an Egyptian deity that predates the Hebrew Bible. The idea that God speaks things into existence is a literary idea that comes from another piece of literature, namely like the Ptah scriptures. And it's just a literary invention because people, when they wrote stories, felt that writing a story created a universe. So they described God as having like the ultimate version of that ability, like being the ultimate storyteller. However,
Exactly.
there's no reason to think that this metaphor for being like an all-powerful storyteller is the way that anything actually works.
How does it work then? Randomness,
Well,
chance,
no,
luck, coincidence?
we think that the quantum mechanics, which we observe, are arising from quantum fields, which are the background that's necessary for quantum mechanics to work. And we think that the beginning of the universe probably emerges from an imbalance in the metastable quantum vacuum. So there's papers on this that can account for the emergence of the early universe from a metastable quantum vacuum. In other words, a universe from nothing spontaneously does actually make sense if the nothing was a quantum stable vacuum.
So that's what you call God? A quantum stable vacuum?
No, it's what we would call the original conditions necessary for the universe to self-organize and emerge from it.
Listen, I'm not trying to be mean here, but who really talks like this on the street daily?
Scientists.
Who cares?
I'm saying, if you want to reach the masses with your message of no God, you have to be able to speak to them in a way that they can understand.
Castle, can you imagine
That's
going
not our
into the
message.
doctor's office and being like, "What are you talking about? Do you believe you talk like this on the streets?" I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Castle, but no.
I mean, these words, this is the first time I've heard of these quantum vacuum fields and all this, whatever you guys talking about here, man.
Yeah, it's
You guys,
confusing.
listen,
But
you
there's-
guys have to get your information from the scientists.
Yes,
And
exactly.
the scientists have been alive for less than 100 years. The Earth has been here for billions of years.
Right, and we study the
Yeah.
evidence of the billions of years of history before we
You're
exist.
going off of the words of the scientists of the past. And guess what? Michio Kaku just got proven wrong about the Big Bang Theory. He admitted it himself.
If we could go off of the words of future scientists, we most definitely would.
Also,
wanna go off the
Mr.
words
Kafka is
of
more of
future
a science
scientists?
communicator than a researcher, right? He talks about what scientists study more than he actually studies anything.
And you're probably taking him out of context, but I've been wanting to just ask you a very specific question, Castle. You ready for it?
Yeah.
Have you ever looked at the trees?
Have I ever what?
Looked at the trees. They're just, I don't know. They're so beautiful, aren't they?
Looked at trees?
Yeah.
Yes, of course I look at the trees every day.
Ah, so beautiful. I feel like that's what the argument's been for like the past little while now, but it's been fun. I'm enjoying it.
Listen, to see the beautiful blue sky and all the white clouds and the golden sun and to say that there's no God, that was the saddest part of me being atheist. I had no one to give thanks to for all this beauty and splendor. That's the saddest part.
Why do you feel it's important to give thanks to somebody?
Because
Why
I'm
can't you just enjoy it for what it is?
What do you mean enjoy it for what it is? If you see someone, they didn't just pop out of nowhere. They came from somewhere. They came from parents.
We were just talking about trees and sky and whatnot,
Right.
and I'm saying, why
The
can't you
trees
just
also
enjoy
have
that?
parents.
Why can't you just enjoy that for what it is,
trees also have parents.
and just live without the stress of having to thank somebody for everything?
Well, how is it stressful to give thanks?
Because it's an action you have to take.
Wait, no. It's something that we give. We have gratitude. We're grateful for. You're not grateful for anything?
I'm grateful for certain things in my life, but I'm not grateful for the sky being blue and the universe existing. It just is.
What are you grateful for?
Nothing. I'm grateful for nothing, and science is grateful for nothing because it doesn't care. It cares about reality, not gratefulness.
What?
Gratefulness doesn't
I'm-
The
matter.
reality is we're here.
I'm grateful to many of my friends for the things they've done for me, but this doesn't require me to be grateful for the universe existing.
Are you grateful to your parents for having you?
Nope.
No. Well, there you go. We found the problem.
Why is that a problem?
The point is that people's attitude about how grateful they are is going to vary, but it's not going to give you some fundamental truth about the universe, whether you should be or shouldn't be grateful, whether the universe is or isn't the way that it is just so that you could be something that you're grateful for. You could be grateful for something that doesn't have to be the fundamental nature of the universe is designed to make that thing happen, or that there's some intelligent creator that you can give thanks to that will verbally recognize what you're saying.
You know, that's funny because God sees right to your heart. You don't have to say a word. God already knows your heart.
You haven't presented any evidence for why there is a God. You've just said that we should be grateful.
I just told you. The fact that we're having this conversation right here and right now is my evidence.
The closest thing
I
you came to like
believe
making
that God created you.
I believe
You
the
believe
magical
that.
potato created you, and the magical potato is allowing us to have
Where's
this
that? Where's that
conversation.
potato at, though?
It's in his
magic.
garden.
It's magic land. It's the magic
He has,
potato.
he has a magic
It's
garden
in a
that's
different
invisible.
dimension. It's
Yeah.
in the Matrix. You guys believe in the Matrix over God, right?
Why aren't you grateful to his magic potato?
Yeah, why aren't you grateful?
I'm
to
not
magical
grateful
potato?
to a magic potato. That's what the other person said.
Yeah, that's
Don't
right.
you-
because
don't
the
you
magical
think it's
potato
silly?
allows the conversation. The magical potato is what allows all of this conversation to happen. The fact that we're having this conversation is evidence of the magical potato. So why aren't you grateful to the magical potato? Because the magical potato allows you to exist. When you look at
You
the
just
mirror and
made
you see
that up.
yourself, did I?
You made that up.
Wait, but I just provided evidence. I gave you the evidence of our conversation and told you that this is evidence of the magical
You pray
potato.
to the potato.
Also,
I don't pray
excuse
to a
me,
potato.
that is insulting. We have had at least 12 to 13 people die for our potato.
I don't know about this potato that you speak of.
Do
Is
you
there a
think-
doctrine? Is there some kind of book that I can read about this potato?
Yes. Harry
Find out
Potter.
more about its features?
They
its
have entire
qualities?
sections actually of it at Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble, huh? Look, man, I've already been to the dark side of the moon with you guys. I was already an atheist. That was years ago.
So CastleKingSide, the point is that there's exactly as much evidence for God as there is for the magic potato.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just heard about this magic potato today.
Okay.
Well, it's the greatest. So the point is, if you don't believe in the magic potato, and if you don't believe in 99% of all religions, why would you believe that your religion is different?
Because just because you don't believe in something doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah, but if there's no evidence to support that it's true, then you're not justified in thinking that
I
it's
told
true.
you, you're my evidence. You're my evidence.
Well,
Of
that's
God.
evidence of the
Even-
magical potato. Why
even-
do you think you existing is not evidence of the magical potato?
Because I don't believe in a magical potato. I don't pray to a potato. I pray
Okay,
to
but
the
I
creator, the
don't
one
care.
that
I
created
don't care.
everything.
I don't
I know
pray
you
to
don't
your
care.
God. I don't believe
I
in your
know.
God. So does that mean that you existing isn't evidence of your God?
What did you say that again?
So you said you don't believe in the magical potato.
Right.
Therefore, this conversation is not evidence of the magical potato. Now, I said, I don't believe in your Sky Daddy. Therefore, this conversation is not evidence of your Sky Daddy.
Oh. But yet you're going to try to convince me of something else? It's the quantum vacuum and all this other stuff? The
No.
neurons and...
What I'm trying to convince you of is that you said this conversation is evidence of a God. And then
Yeah.
I said this conversation is evidence of a magical potato. And then you said, no, it's
Yeah.
not, because I don't believe in a magical potato. And
Oh,
then I
okay. So
said-
your version of God is the magical potato. That's your
No.
God.
No.
Huh?
Pay attention. So
Let me
the
try
point I'm-
again.
No.
Speak
no,
again without the nerdy words.
Okay, so you claimed this conversation is evidence of God. And then
Right.
I claimed this conversation is evidence of a magical potato. And you said, no, it's not, because I don't believe in a magical potato. The fact that you don't
Oh.
believe means it's not evidence. And so then
Okay,
I
so
said,
right.
I
mhm.
don't believe in God, which means this conversation is not evidence for God, just like it's not evidence of a magical potato. So everything you claimed was evidence for God, I can claim as evidence for a magical potato, which you were
The
right when you said
yeah.
I just made that up.
Yeah, you
So the
did.
fact that you can claim your existence and this conversation is evidence for anything you just make up shows it's not evidence at all for the potato or for God. It's evidence of neither one.
Is that right?
Yes.
Just want to quickly mention, I've put a poll in our YouTube chat. Are you grateful for the universe existing? It's not over yet, in case people want to get their views in there, but so far, 60% say, no, I don't need to be grateful. 10% say, no, I'm very unhappy about this. 0% say, yes, the universe needs me. And 30% is other with optional comments.
That means
Yeah,
the majority of your listeners are atheists.
I feel like there's a joke in
no,
Douglas
no.
Adams that says something like the universe is
Okay.
regarded as a mistake or something like that, or quite a bad
Yeah,
idea.
actually, that quote, just quickly, in response to our guest here, no, it doesn't mean they're atheists. It means that our audience doesn't feel they need to be grateful to the universe. That's all it means. And the quote was actually brought in that you mentioned, Ix, by Blastermaster80, saying, the story so far, in the beginning, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and has been widely regarded as a bad move. Yeah, you're right. I think that's Douglas Adams.
It's a classic, yeah. Now, like, I'll just say personally, I am grateful for the existence of the universe. However, I don't think that, other than being like psychologically beneficial, that's essential in any way, or tells us about the nature of the universe. And I don't address that gratitude to a supernatural being. Now, I can understand from my past when I was a theist, and I did sort of think in terms of gods and goddesses and so on. I can understand the sort of psychological experience of wanting to address it to somebody, or even that it might feel better or more psychologically satisfying to address it to somebody. We have a very strong cognitive bias towards anthropomorphizing things and imputing agency as the explanation for things. In other words, thinking that if something happens, like a rock falls, someone must have pushed the rock, right? But we find lots and lots of things that don't have any intelligent cause behind them. And I don't think we should limit what we could be grateful for to only the things that must have a conscious designer. Because we can just be glad that we are fortunate without needing to address it to some party and say, thanks for pushing the rock, Sky Daddy, or whatever. You can just say, I am so glad that that rock didn't fall and kill me when it could have. It landed right next to me and didn't kill me. That's really fortunate. I'm glad to be alive. I'm grateful. It doesn't require you to address to somebody, and whether you're grateful or not, it's just a psychological fact.
And that's being grateful for the situation.
Yeah.
You're grateful because your life was spared?
You're grateful to be alive, yeah.
Right.
But the idea of being spared, you're already kind of like importing the idea that it was spared by some agent, right? So
wasn't it?
No. The fact that the rock didn't crush you when it could have is a matter of luck.
Luck? I don't believe in luck.
I know you don't, because what your worldview entails is that everything is for a purpose. There's some like plan behind everything, etc. Right?
Yeah. Everyone has a purpose.
Yeah, right. So there's a number of psychological phenomena that seem to underlie this tendency of thinking, and it would take a while to familiarize yourself with those. But I think that if you did so, you would come to the conclusion that what you're experiencing is called pareidolia. Pareidolia is like, have you ever looked at a cloud and thought that the cloud looked like a sailboat or a dragon or a tree? And you look to the person beside you and you say, do you see the tree? And they go, no, I see an octopus. Why do you think it looks like a tree? Now, which of you is right? Is it an octopus or is it a tree?
No, that's just evidence that we're unique. Everyone has a unique soul.
No, but the point is there's no fact of the matter about what the cloud is.
Yeah, it's open to your interpretation individually.
Exactly. You're interpreting something as though it is what it resembles to you. But the fact is that there is no tree or octopus in that cloud. Because what your brain is doing is it's seeing a pattern, even if there is no pattern. Because our brains are very good at spotting actual patterns. Like, you can spot that a cheetah or some predator that's going to eat you is likely to do so. But you also imagine that things that are not going to eat you are animals that are going to eat you, which is why you might be terrified of everything that, makes a little noise at night. And being paranoid is okay. From an evolutionary standpoint, your ancestors could be hyper paranoid and think that things that weren't there were scary, because if they ran away, it at least kept them alive some of the time when something actually was dangerous. So that's why we have this very hyperactive ability to see patterns, right? There's no downside to our ancestors being super paranoid, but there's a big downside to our ancestors being insufficiently afraid, right? So we've developed this hyperactive seeing of patterns that aren't actually there. But when we see it in extreme cases, we say that person is mentally, disturbed. That person thinks that everything's out to get them, or that person thinks that there's aliens in their tea kettle, or that person thinks that the government is controlling them through the radio waves or something like that. People who are paranoid and who believe things that are not there are there, we call crazy. But in very mild versions of it, it's just a common everyday thing called pareidolia. And that's what most theists who believe that everything is God's plan are doing. They're imputing things that happen close together as God had a plan and did all these things for some reason.
It's also where we get things like Jesus toast. Jesus actually isn't showing up on your toast.
Right. I get it. Look, the thing is, I'm not paranoid, okay? My ancestors were not paranoid either. We're warriors. We're brave. And that was before we read in the Bible to fear no evil. You see?
We're also lovers.
Now
and
we're
nurturers.
really not paranoid. Now we really believe that everything is for a reason. Everyone has a purpose here. That's what we believe, man.
So, Castle, have you ever thought about studying how consciousness works or how the brain works?
Yeah, how does it work? Why don't you give me a crash course?
Well, I don't want to go into too much detail right now, but
What do you mean? Can't you just break it down simply, quickly?
I did give you some, or I don't know if I was being.
Tell me, what is the conscious? Are you conscious right now? Are you thinking? Are you using that brain to speak to me right now? Yes or no?
Yes, I am.
Okay, wonderful. We can agree
Castle,
on that.
Castle, you're interrupting me. Let me just finish the thought. So the thing that you could do if you want to go into studying this more is you could become more familiar with what accounts for your conscious experience and what accounts for some of your cognitive biases towards thinking that agents are behind everything, even when no agent is required to explain things. But you have to go and kind of do some work to study some neuroscience and to become familiar with the facts to be a more informed
oh man,
party.
You're telling me I have to go back to school to learn about what I've already figured out in life over 47 years of life?
Yeah, it's gonna.
How old are you, buddy? I want to know.
Necessary? Yeah, it's not necessary for you to know that.
It is necessary.
No,
with age comes wisdom. How old are you?
It's irrelevant.
It's relevant.
Well,
I won't have
if you're not
some
going to be able to get
youngster
past
who doesn't
this,
have the experience, the wisdom of life,
if you're not going to be able to get past
to tell
this,
me about what it is to be conscious. I won't allow that.
If you're not going to be able to get past this, then maybe we'll have to move on to somebody else.
Just saying, man.
But it's not relevant.
I asked you a simple question and you couldn't even answer that.
I'm refusing to answer it.
Okay, Castle, I'll have a talk back and forth. What do you think consciousness is?
It's this. You have your own brain, you have your own brain that you're using to formulate these words, and we're having a discussion. You have your conscious and I have my consciousness. See?
That is extremely vague, but
I'm saying that's a quick way, an easy way to break it down. I asked for this man to break it down simply. He couldn't even do that.
I actually tried to, and you interrupted me, and then you insisted on knowing my age before.
Here's the microphone, and while you're at it, let me hear you sing that song when you're done with your statement.
It was quite rude, actually.
Let me hear what an atheist heart sounds like.
So,
here,
Castle,
take the microphone.
Castle, you don't seem to be able to hear someone out without interrupting them and interjecting. And
we're having a conversation.
Sandbagging. Yeah. So in the case of neuroscience, for you to understand some of these issues, you're not going to be able to get it all from us in this conversation. You're going to have to be curious enough to want to know what's true and to go out and start doing some reading and doing some video watching and learn for yourself. Would you be willing to try that?
Other people? I have to learn about my experience in life through other people's experience, right?
Yes, that is how life works.
That is
But what about
actually-
your own experiences?
Well, and I just want to go back to my question of consciousness, because you seem to, is it relevant to a god would be more my thing, because I really wanted to ask, we could agree that maybe the grass isn't conscious, and yet maybe a fish is conscious.
Yeah, I think we could agree on that. The fish at least has some kind of mind to fend for itself out there in the ocean.
Okay.
Whereas the grass has to sit there and take your abuse. It has
Okay.
no way to
now-
fight for itself.
I agree with that. Get me, or at least there are ways, because it's got a root system. But get me to a god. Does a god have a conscience?
Look, did you know when it comes to God, I'm agnostic. I don't claim to know how God works. I just believe in God.
So you are agnostic about a god.
When it comes to God, I don't know how God does any of this. I don't know how God made any of it. I just believe that God exists.
Well, I want to ask the other question. So I will point out, even though this is your first time hearing about the potato, what if there actually is an eternal fryer underneath us? And what if not believing within, above, and all around is the potato, we will actually go there? And so my question to you is, how can we know we're not going to know there? And I guess you're saying that you're agnostic about a god, but you kind of, I guess you almost beat my punch, because you're now saying you can't know that there's a god, but that's kind of a far difference from the trees. Hello, hello.
Oh, I was just wondering if you're done speaking.
Oh no, I'm just asking, how do you know we're not going to be sent to the eternal fryer beneath us? And
We don't know. You know, what you know is personal. Who you know is social. Did you know that?
Yeah,
I'm
I do know
saying
that.
you can believe what you want to believe. That's on you. That's personal. What you know is personal. Who you know is social. This life is about who you know. Did you know that?
It depends on each person's standards. Some people prefer the endeavor of scientific understanding. Other people prefer to be more focused on people. So each person has different needs, personal needs in their lives and personal interests.
Every single human being needs another human being. We're social creatures.
Not certain people who live in lighthouses all their lives, but I'd
fact
say
that you-
it's quite
Okay, go
common,
ahead.
though.
Listen, did you know you got here from a mom and a dad? You needed somebody to get here.
I got here that way.
I know. I'm pretty sure most of us did.
Castle, you're
unless,
saying,
you know,
you're
unless
saying a lot
you're
of
created
platitudes.
in a
Castle,
vacuum, right? You like to use that vacuum?
Castle, you're saying a lot of platitudes and asking us,
What?
did we know this? Did we know that? But at the end of the day, what we're asking you is, what evidence or reason do you have to support the claim that a God exists? You started by saying the fact we were talking was the evidence.
Yeah.
You've made a number of question-begging statements that God is the evidence that God is. What is the actual foundation? If you just said that you're agnostic, you don't
When
have
it comes to God,
evidence, but you choose to believe, right?
Yeah.
Why is that a justified belief?
And CastleKingSide, did you know that our whole planet is in a vacuum?
Is it?
Yes, sir, it is.
Can you explain to me how?
Outside of the atmosphere, if you
Can I get a response?
outer space is a vacuum. I think
all-
I've blown his mind here. I'm
no,
sorry. I
did
didn't
you
mean
know
to do
that
that.
the Earth, it orbits the sun, which is a star, right?
Yeah, and between the star and our Earth it seems to be that space is pretty much a vacuum.
A vacuum.
Oh yeah, you're not thinking that that's all air all the way up to the sun, are you?
Like Hoover? Or
All the way up
Jet
to
Level?
sun? No, I haven't been into outer space. I can't tell you for sure. I can only tell you what the astronauts say.
And the satellite equipment and
Right.
various other means
And
of
all those
determining
other
this. Yeah.
instruments. Right. Mm-hmm. And let's get one thing straight. You didn't blow my mind on anything, okay? I'm here trying to help you guys. I'm here to serve you guys. That's what I'm here for. I'm serving you.
I'm glad that your mind is intact.
Yeah.
Can I
Listen,
get a
do
slice
you
of
know
pizza?
you're speaking to an
Pepperoni?
artistic genius? I don't know if you guys know that.
We're very
That's
aware,
why
dude.
I asked for you to sing a song because I want to hear what kind of
Dude, you're
artist you are.
literally in 2 Call of Duty games. We knew that. Come on.
Frank Sinatra?
Yeah, the 2019 version and the cell phone version. Yeah. The mobile version. I'm just saying, listen, I'm here to help you guys. That's why I believe God allowed for this conversation. I'm here to
Right,
help.
but you don't have any evidence that he did, and you don't have any evidence for anything so far.
The evidence is this conversation.
Castle, it was us who allowed for this conversation, and you should be thanking Taco for bringing you up on the stage. And he's using the name Jesus at the moment, by the way.
And once again, there's no reason for this God conscious to exist. We already separated out from grass and a fish. What exactly is this God?
The creator. The one that created all of this. All of it. That's what we believe.
Yes, but why?
What do you mean, why? Because we see it. We can observe with the telescopes. We can observe with the microscope. We can see God's glory in all of it.
You can see
It's
God
just
with
a
a
feeling of gratitude. Just to be thankful to be here. That we have eyes to see, ears to hear, a nose to smell, a mouth so we can taste these things, and hands that we can
It's
feel
called
things.
being an animal.
An animal? That's what you call it?
Yes.
I'm thankful for the butt I have to poop when I can see
Not,
the glory
not
of
all
God in my
animals
poop.
have these attributes. Did you know?
You're saying not
Castle-
all animals have a face exactly like ours and all the exact same senses? Yes, that is true.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Castle, I'm going to give us an update on the poll in the YouTube channel. 43% saying, are they grateful for the universe existing? 43% are, no, I don't need to be grateful. 19% are, no, I'm very unhappy about this. 10% are, yes, the universe needs me. And 29% are the others.
Are the others?
They voted for other, comments optional. Yeah.
There's no one that said, yes, I'm thankful for this
10%.
beautiful life that God has made.
10% said yes.
Oh, 10%? Ah, cool. See? There you go. It starts off small and then it grows to be big. You know? I know this because of my channel. I started off with 2 subscribers and now look. And then watch, 2 to 3 years from now, it's going to be a lot more than that. You're going to see. You're going to see.
I believe you.
Call in to plug your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Why don't you just tell us the name
I'm
of it?
saying, I spoke it and now it's going to happen. I believe it and it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time.
I say that about the lottery all the time.
You what? You what?
I said that about the lottery. So
Oh, I
I'm
don't believe in
gonna
the
win the
lottery. Remember,
lottery.
I don't believe in taking chances like that. No.
I don't
No, it's
believe
real.
in you.
Oh,
You could go to a 7-Eleven, trust me.
yeah, you can play the lottery, but it doesn't mean you're going to win.
Oh,
True.
We move on to someone.
I'm saying if you believe in God Almighty, you're going to win. You're going to win. Yeah.
Castle, do you have any last words?
That'd be great.
Oh, you want to get me out of here? I wanted to hear that person sing that song.
Oh, if you want to sing real quick, you're welcome to sing. We would love to hear you sing.
I'm saying I want to hear I want to hear the atheist song. I want to hear what's wrapped around the atheist heart. That's what I wanted to hear.
Here we come. Do-da, do-da.
Uh-huh. Amy Newman, is that you?
It might be.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying, man.
Okay, Castle, I'll give you one parting thing here. If you want to hear an atheist song, look up Steve Martin on YouTube, an atheist song. He's done a performance with a banjo. It was very nice.
No, I'm not interested in. I'm not talking to Steve Martin. I'm talking to you.
Well, you asked for an atheist song, and I just told you where you could find it.
I know. I wanted to hear your song. I wanted to hear the song that's wrapped around your heart.
Well, this is not a musical show, unfortunately, so that doesn't fit our format. Thanks for
Listen,
calling
did
in.
you know this is a Theist Helpline, right?
Yeah.
Did you know
I took-
music comes from God?
No.
Why don't
You didn't know that?
No,
Why
Ed
don't-
Sheeran.
Is
What
God
a
Britney
case.
Spears? Because Britney Spears made
Wait
a
a
lot of
minute.
music.
Wait a minute. Why don't we open the air
Move on
so
now, 'cause
Castle
this
can
has
have
been
a
a waste of
moment
time
to
for a
touch
while.
some hearts with his beautiful singing voice?
No. Listen, anybody who knows me knows I can sing, all right? That's not
We all
that's
know
not
it.
any news. Yeah, that's not any news to anybody.
Castle, did you know that soul was invented by musicians in the 1970s?
In the 70s? No, I'm pretty sure my ancestors knew about it long before the 70s.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming up here. We're going to go ahead and move on. Have a great day, Castle.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Castle. It was good talking with you.
Thank you, man. Timeless, you're up next. What's going on?
Hey, lab, bro, I've been waiting for so long. I have a chemistry assignment to do. You guys took so long, bro. All right, listen. So, I have a few things to discuss with you guys, yeah? All right. So, first of all, how do you explain things that science can't explain today?
Such as?
For examples like dreams.
We have a pretty good
explain that.
understanding of how dreams work.
No.
Other
Not
one?
like dreams. Not like dreams like currently of our imagination, but like dreams of like the future that happens.
You're talking about
you're
prophecy,
talking
like
about-
Nostradamus. You think Nostradamus predicted the future with like magic dreams or something?
Well,
Not
there actually
necessarily,
There
just-
are examples of having dreams and visions that do happen in the future. I've had these. These are actually really common. It's a phenomenon of certain patterns that we see that are reconstructed in the brain based off probability, and then sometimes they do happen, but they actually happen all the time. Most of them are failures. You just happen to remember the ones that get it correct. So it's I forget what it's called. Survivor bias, something. Remember the
Yes, sir.
hits, forget the misses.
Yeah, survivor bias is right.
Sharpshooter fallacy.
I mean, I'd have to disagree with that because some people, like, they have, for example, dreams of like them dying eventually, right? And then the time actually comes close to them where they do pass away.
Well, if you wait
How
long
can-
enough.
How can the brain reconstruct their death date? Like,
You can imagine yourself dying, and if you imagine yourself dying in a common way, like being hit by a car, there's actually a chance you're going to get that right because it's pretty common. Like if you imagine yourself being abducted by aliens, you're probably going to get that one wrong. People imagine things happening all the time in dreams. Some of them get those things right because they're based off of reality, and in reality, same patterns happen a lot, like getting hit by a car, falling to your death, dying of a heart attack. These are common. People dream of them, and it happens sometimes. Happens no greater than a rate of chance. It's already explained by science very well.
you're still like not answering the question directly. I mean, I'm telling you at times where people have specific dreams of ways they've died, and then they've died in that within the same week.
Yeah. So
It
if
doesn't
a
necessarily have to
billion-
be a car.
So if 1 billion people all have dreams,
Mhm.
some of those dreams are going to come true because there's a whole lot of them. Most of them, like 99.999%, are not going to happen. They're going to be wrong. So if a bunch of people are dreaming, a small percentage of those people are going to have dreams that actually happen in the future. But to know if it's actually real, you would need to know if that happens at a higher rate than chance. If it happens at the same rate than chance, it's no different than having an imagination, just imagining something randomly, and having it happen by chance. That answers your question directly.
Sure. I mean, it's a very theoretical way to think about it, but
It's the
sure.
proven way science has already proven this has happened.
I would
Okay.
also like to see the specifics of those actual events, because if a guy is saying that I've had a dream about trains killing me,
Mhm.
and he says it and he goes and a train kills him, I mean, that's not a supernatural event. It could have been more a psychosis. It could have been he made something like that happen, I would like to see evidence that, I don't know, there's an actual Death Note style thing going on here.
Well, you can't really have evidence of someone actually dreaming something. They could have just said it, and by coincidence, they would have just died.
That's fine.
If you don't think that we have good evidence for what people dream, why did you bring it up as evidence for anything?
I brought it up because I just wanted to see your answer, and I expected you guys to give me extremely theoretical answers, which you have. You can't really. Science doesn't fully explain it, but I just wanted to put it out there.
No, it does. It was explained, and it is an adequate explanation. The fact that hold on a second. The fact that you don't like accept the adequacy of the answer may not be because the answer is inadequate. It may be because you haven't fully grasped that the adequacy of the answer is the case. Maybe you just don't quite understand what is being said.
No, it could just be you guys living in denial, but that's fine. So anyway, my second point.
Do you understand what the Texas sharpshooter fallacy is? So Amy mentioned that as like a more specific version of the survivor bias thing, and it's actually a good thing to explain. So suppose that you make a prediction. You say, I had a dream, and then the prediction comes true, and you go, wow, my dream was accurate, right? Now, you might say this is evidence for some supernatural belief, like you think that your dreams are reliable as a source of knowledge about the future, right? But this is kind of like a person who shoots at the side of a building, and then they go and they find the bolt hole where they hit the building, and they examine it, and they draw a circle around that hole, and they say, look, I hit my target. So they're justifying only the time where it hit the thing and saying that they aimed for the thing that they happened to hit. But they're not accounting for the fact that they didn't actually predict exactly the time and the place, et cetera, of that thing. They're just picking the point where it finally did hit and then saying that was their prediction. The accuracy is basically invented in their head based on whatever happened to have happened.
Okay. That's still not an accurate answer, but sure. We can go with that if you're happy with it. I really want to move on with the second point, though. So, Richardson said that
he took the time to you, and you're gonna respond condescending like that. Let's move on.
I was curious to hear what he was going to ask me about.
That's not okay.
Like, I don't even know what he was going to address. Do you?
He's just being all condescending. That's not all right.
Oh, okay. He was just about to say Richardson said, and that's obvious to me.
Being a dick to X.
That's fine.
Okay, yeah, we'll move on then. Yeah.
What's going on, Skorak?
Hello, Skorak.
So a few things first, right? Just to kind of clarify, I am not a theist, right? I am an atheist agnostic. I just want to come here to argue from the point of a theist because I have some questions, right, about, sometimes things swim in my head that, resemble theistic thoughts. And I was thinking, hey, maybe here they could be clarified or answered to kind of like get my worldview all leveled, If that's not what you do, I can bounce real quick, no worries.
Oh, no, this is great. Actually, anybody who's trying to challenge their own ideas is trying to do something that I think is very worthy. And I think a lot of people here would probably agree with this too. So, yes, please do present the idea. It sounds like this could be quite interesting.
All right, thank you. I think I have asked this somewhere before, but I don't think I got... Anyhow, we all here believe in, natural selection and evolution, right? I was thinking, what kind of conditions could predispose for sapiens, specifically for humans, while every other species on Earth didn't get that almost like patch yet, like that like firmware update, right? Wouldn't that mean that if we got sapiens, which is this very unique, right, thing that only we have, it could either indicate a purpose, or if it doesn't indicate a purpose, it could be just like some sort of like weird freak accident, because those are the only two solutions that come to my head. But of course, I'm not here to answer the question.
Everything is a weird freak accident in evolution. It's random mutation. It's the random part.
Yeah, but most how's it called? Most evolutionary, lines usually happen for a sort of purpose, right? Like
No.
longer beaks in birds happens because they have to pick off worms and other stuff that hides in trees,
No.
It usually can be logically explained as to why unless it's a mutation.
You're
Those
talking about a niche, basically. You're saying
Yeah,
that there must have been some niche that it served to have the development of the precursors of sapiens. And then that niche, when it was exploited, allowed for increasing sapiens to be increasingly successful, which would have triggered a gradual increase in the degree of sapiens, right?
Yeah, essentially. I'm talking like what exactly triggered, like, why
Have you
did
heard
we
of-
get it?
Yeah, so have you heard of Donald Hoffman?
No.
Okay, so he's got a book. I haven't read the book yet. I haven't obtained a copy yet. But Donald Hoffman's got a book called Sentience, The Invention of Consciousness. And he's done a bunch of research on animals, including blind sight in monkeys, where he found that it was an accidental discovery, but he found that monkeys who lost all the neurological stuff that they need to be able to see, nonetheless acted like they could see stuff. And he thinks that this phenomenon, which he refers to as blind sight, is evidence that the phenomenal consciousness, the experience of seeing, can go away, but an animal can still receive the stimuli necessary to respond to its environment without the conscious part of it. I'm not sure what I think of the theory myself because I haven't read the whole book. But anyway, he thinks that there is an account for what kinds of conditions led to the development of what he calls sentience in our earliest ancestor that had a phenomenal experience. He thinks that birds have it and mammals have it. And like I mentioned before, he thinks that it probably developed in cylodonts, like some common ancestor to both mammals and reptiles. And he thinks the best candidate for the conditions that would have arisen is social hierarchy and the need for what's called a theory of mind about other beings to give you an advantage within the social hierarchy, which also requires you to have an awareness of your own thought process, a kind of thinking about your thinking, such that you can then infer what other animals are thinking and are likely to do, so you can predict what they're going to think about something happening, whether they're going to approve of it or disapprove of it, for instance. So you can figure out and strategize about how to do the things that'll win you the most approval and the most social popularity in your tight-knit social group. So he thinks that's the best candidate for what accounts for the original arising of phenomenal consciousness, aka sentience, as he uses the term, in our common ancestor.
And
It's hard to say, but that's one possible explanation.
And if I could just add on, I actually need to look up that book because I agree with a lot of what Ix was just saying right there. I think that we have a layer of consciousness. I think we have animals that then have sentience because it's hard to ask, are amoeba conscious, even though we have animal form amoeba? But are dogs introspective? A lot of them, I think we're starting to get more and more closer to something like that. And I think when you're asking about sapience, I think the right word was niche. We are tool makers. And because we kind of had that with our opposable thumbs along with our bigger brains, that has made us accomplish a hell of a lot. And it's sometimes I get what I call the we went to the moon fallacy often, is we are so amazing. It has to be something special because we went to the moon, we did this, we built this. And to me, that just says once again that, to use the same word I used earlier, it's awesome, amazing that we have something that I think introspection, like I was saying, is another layer on top of that. To me, is like Ix was saying, thinking about thinking, in that, we're having meta conversations instead of just seeing if something is in front of us and running away from it or not. And so, this is what we do. It's natural, and it's because of social groups.
Yeah, that makes sense. By the way, I got the name wrong. Sorry, I was confusing because I just watched the thing about Donald Hoffman. It's Nicholas Humphrey, and I was able to find the book. So if you look on places where books can be found, it is available. It's called Sentience, the Invention of Consciousness by Nicholas Humphrey.
Mm-hmm. So, just to try to like get this right, essentially, it's nothing special. Like it's just it's a specific attribute we have that kind of like shows the illusion of it being like so much higher than other animals when in reality it's like one step above. It's like one deviation.
Well, I mean, he thinks it was like a big breakaway that was very. The reason he thinks that it was unusual for this to develop, like that it didn't develop in other animals, is that it's mostly a wasted ability. Like his blind sight research leads him to the conclusion that animals don't need phenomenal consciousness to solve tasks, like to solve problems. So that the ability to like think about your own thinking seems really important to us because we do it all the time, just compulsively. But if you look at animals that don't appear to do that, they're very, very, very successful. They can be very, very intelligent. They can still solve problems. So he thinks that cognition, the ability to like think problems through and even predict the future, is separate from this sentient experience, this phenomenal consciousness thing, and that there's no use for phenomenal consciousness in most animals. It doesn't serve any evolutionary advantage. It doesn't make you more likely to reproduce or to survive. But what it did do is it made you more competitive in a social hierarchy, because if you had an idea of what your own thinking was well enough that you could infer that other creatures in your peer group had similar thinking, you could guess what they were going to do in the future and what they're going to like and dislike for you to do to make them happy with you. And it makes sense, right? That there's only going to be a select group of animals where that's important enough to matter. Because a lot of herd animals have a social group where all they need to do is basically have sex, eat grass, and not let 100% of them die, and they will have some children who succeed and continue. Most creatures can get by with just doing that much. They don't need this social competition. But some of our earliest ancestors did, and those are the reasons probably that sentience emerged.
Yeah, fair enough. That seems satisfactory enough to me.
It's still an unsolved question. Like anything with evolutionary psychology, where we're trying to infer things about how our mind and mental experience can be explained in terms of ancient conditions that could have given rise to it. We have to admit the limits of our methods, kind of like reverse engineering. We're looking at what we have now. We're just kind of trying to reverse backwards and guess what could have allowed for it to happen.
Yeah, I'm looking at this as a theory, right? And it's like, it makes sense to me. I'm not saying it's necessarily true. I'm just saying that, all right, if it could be that,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was about it, honestly. That was the question.
Cool. Is there anything else that you've been pondering?
Well, it's probably a little bit more of like the broader issue of like, even the fact of evolution itself is a bit like, okay, so why does life want to self-perpetuate? Because as far as we can see, at the end of that road is a burning planet, and way far down the line, it's a burning universe, right? Like everything, as far as all of the theories we have, ends that, okay, well, at some point, whatever the fuck this is gonna run out of gas. Why do species only exist to perpetuate themselves if that perpetuation doesn't exactly lead to anything? It's just perpetuation for the sake of perpetuation.
Genes and natural selection.
I mean, the question you're asking, the why question, unless it's rooted in some kind of teleonomy, like what is the mechanism that gives rise to or produces this, which is what we were talking about before. Like, what conditions would explain the circumstances that would favor or benefit a conscious being rather than an unconscious being evolving. If we're just asking, why does the universe exist, or what is the meaning of life, or something like that, we're generally getting away from the kinds of questions which have truth value. In other words, questions that can be answered.
Yeah.
Right. Like you might have a personal answer to that, and that might be important to you. That's fine. I think that a lot of us can create a meaning around why we think life is worth living, or why we think that there's something to look forward to, but it's going to be individual, right? Like that's a matter of choosing to find a meaningful goal or something that you value, and it's not going to be universal. But it's I'm not saying the question is irrelevant in the sense that it's not good to have your own answer to that question, but I don't think that there's any universal true answer to that question.
Wait, were you asking from like an evolutionary perspective? Because there is an answer from the evolutionary perspective. Things that don't have an inherent desire to reproduce and continue to grow die off more often. Therefore, we, as surviving species, have an inbuilt desire to reproduce and continue living because it was evolutionarily advantageous.
Well, yeah, but my question was like on the more broad sense of like, if we are to get way back, right? Like, how did the first protozoans be like, yes, we want to survive? How did that desire happen? And at the end of the day, since we all know that like eventually the universe is gonna run out of juice, it's at the end of the day a very pointless desire. So why does all life want to do that?
We have to separate out our own wants and desires. I think at this point in the evolutionary chain, we actually have to put in a lot of effort and going through pain not to want to live. However, you're talking about self-replicating molecules 4.5 billion years ago, when the early Earth was still, a very different environment. And those are two separate things. And one has nothing to do with a mind, and the other has everything to do with one.
There is a way of sort of generalizing about what kind of things physics is doing that give rise to self-organizing systems like protocells, which would then give rise to replicators, which then give rise to life in us. One of the theories about what we could sort of say is generally happening is called the free energy principle by Carl Friston, and there's a bunch of different offshoots of this, which are to do with like how it works in physics, how it works in biology. But there's such a thing as a Markov blanket. If you think about physics in terms of information, a thing that has a membrane between an internal state and an external state, such that the internal state can be in a patterned way different than the outside state in ways that are repeatable, is going to be able to self-organize to have a very different structure than the external environment. Basically, membranes are special, right? And so when we look at things that have a membrane between an inner and an outer state that's only semi-permeable, in other words, some energy goes in and out, but most energy stays on one side or the other, we then get very different stuff on the two sides of that barrier. And the theories about how life started have to do with just such a Markov blanket, aka a protocell, and all it required was lipids, which are hydrophobic. In other words, they repel water, to have one side of them that has stuff in it, hence the protocell's internal contents, and the other side, the ocean. And that allowed for self-replicating molecules to get started and have their results reproduce, and then the protocell splits into two once it gets too large, and eventually it bootstraps reproduction. So seems like there's a kind of thing that life is that actually is generalizable even beyond life. It's just something that happens in physics over and over and over again. Things that can have a barrier between them and the outside world self-organize into a structure that's complex. And they do so because of trying to reduce, or they appear as though they're trying to reduce the amount of free energy in the system.
Oh, okay, fair enough. That makes sense, though. That last one kind of
it's
like,
pretty out there, but
why it happened, right?
It's a how it happened thing. So the basic problem with asking why questions when you're not talking about conscious agents is that there is no answer to the why when a conscious agent's not involved. Why is something that conscious agents make up and infer and impute about stuff, but it's not the how. It's the why that we invent. The how can be explained. The why is just something that we determine for ourselves.
Fair. All right. The thing more for me and my questions is that I am not necessarily a very I believe in the scientific method. I'm not very good at it, right? My own, my atheism more stems from philosophical questions, right? So I am less of a, okay, God doesn't exist because this, and this on the observable thing. I'm more like God shouldn't exist, right? Or if he does exist, that's not good what he did, so I don't want him to exist, right? So more of my questions are about the, that. More of my questions
the
are
problem
about
of evil and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, true. If we go that far back, answering the why is a little, we get into theoretics.
Yeah, I mean, why is a thing that we make up, basically. And we're prone to making up whys even when they're not there, because we're unsatisfied with the how, so we assume there's a why.
Fair. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm totally right. Everything has been answered, right? But I suppose that is part of having questions. Some of them just kind of sit there. It's a little difficult to
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I do think it's fine to want to test the questions or doubts that one has that come up, the questions that are not easily answered, right? That's a perfectly good reason to want to call in and discuss something. So,
and the most important thing is that when we don't know something, we just say, I don't know. We don't fill it in with an answer.
All right, fair enough. No, I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Well, thanks for calling.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming out.
Thanks for joining us. That was great. We really appreciate you raising that.
We've got Childish up next.
Welcome, Childish. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Yeah, could you wait one moment? It won't be long. Just issues with background noise.
That's okay. It's a great time to say I love everyone out in chat, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.
All right, Childish, if you're going to be more than another 10 seconds on here, we'll probably move on to our next guest and then bring you back after that.
He's running outside as we speak.
We do have a live show going here, so we should probably maybe put him back to the audience and bring up the next one.
Slim?
Hello, Slim. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks. So I just want to talk briefly about the history of Jesus Christ. Yeah, I know some people are already interested in this. There's a lot to kind of go into, and a lot of words and meaningless gibberish and letters and numbers, especially the numbers.
I mean, like the 77,
more than that,
all the numerological
yeah,
stuff.
or
Yeah.
666, 999, 777, you know, the lucky number. Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it even goes beyond numbers too, which is the craziest thing about, you know, Charles Darwin's evolution theory. It's about colors. You know, there's yellow, there's green, there's blue, black, white.
What?
And, you know, that's, some people would call that race bait in this server, especially when I say black and white, you know.
History of Jesus.
Shirts
Go
and
back to the
skins.
History of Jesus part.
Right. Okay. So Jesus was a child who was born in a mandible. And he was born. Yeah, Jesus was born in a manger. Sorry.
Okay.
You know,
how mandible would make it a lot more interesting, though.
Do you know what a donkey is?
Yes, I know what.
Do you know what a donkey? You know what an ass is? Yeah. So basically, there's a man and a woman. No, it's not. There's a man and a woman. John was the man. The woman name was Mary. Mary was a beautiful lady. She was
Joseph?
the most majestical, beautiful
Hold on a
lady.
second. Before we
Yeah.
do the nativity scene story time, can you just briefly state, like, what is your position? Are you a Christian? What kind of Christian do you refer to
A
yourself
theist. I'm a
Okay.
theist.
Okay. So
I'm specifically a theist because otherwise life will literally go extinct within matters of trillions of years. So
Only trillion?
Okay, so
Yeah.
what you're saying is that you're a theist because you think that without theism, then the future would have extinction in it?
everything will be gone in seconds.
Imagine
It's not.
You said trillions.
It's not a
You said
matter.
trillions. You said trillions of years, and then you said seconds. Wouldn't that be many, many, many trillions of seconds?
Correct. Yeah, it would.
Okay. Okay. So are you a theist just for that reason? Because you think that it gives more hope to some eternal future rather than some possible end?
You're on your computer right now, right? Or on your phone, maybe. Maybe you're
No.
browsing the internet,
I'm
watching
using my
YouTube.
psychic mind
That's
powers to speak.
that's not an answer to
Maybe
my
you're.
question.
Pew, pew.
Like, you're changing the subject. So my
Listen.
question is just, do you believe, because of the reason you just stated, is that your primary reason?
My primary reason is not because of evil or good. It's because there are things that exist, and these things inherently wreak seeds that plant new life. Does that make sense to you?
That's just biology, right? Life produces life. What's the point?
No, it's not just biology. It's way more advanced than biology. If you want to talk about biology, you could talk about, Spider-Man. Oh my gosh, look, it's a superhero. It's Spider-Man. Or you
It's
could
not-
talk
it's-
about
you're not being very-
Batman.
You're not being very coherent. It kind of comes off as trolling, to be honest. And you have troll in your profile tags. Can you make a non-troll point?
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Our
Whether
answer.
whether or not, yeah, listen, man. Music, I'd say just study music. That's what I'd say.
Is music
Study
like
music.
Is music like Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Sounds more like
Yeah.
Batman.
Yeah, true. It does sound more like Batman. Anyways, study 808 beats, because if you don't, all life will be vanished and possibly reappear in a snap.
But an 808 is nothing without a 303.
It sounds
303, yeah.
Slim.
True.
It sounds like you're quite preoccupied with the end of the universe. Is this something that worries you?
Oh,
Dearly, yeah.
He's trolling
very dearly.
He's having a hard time keeping the beat and keeping the
Yep.
rhythm.
All right.
You need if you're gonna troll, you need a drummer so you can keep it together.
Sorry, before there was so much background noise that you wouldn't have been able to hear me, and then as soon as I cleared it up, I got kicked.
Welcome back, Childish. Childish. You were not kicked. What happened is you weren't responding to us, so we moved on to our next guest, and we did say we would bring you back up and try again, and you're here now.
I apologize for that.
Okay, no problem. So I'm just going to start again. So welcome, thank you for joining us, and what have you got for us today?
So, personally, I have two questions. My first one is, I just feel like a lot of the, I guess, rebuttals or refutations of Pascal's wager, at least in the mainstream, feel kind of weak to me. And I would like you guys to clear up where I feel like they're weak and I guess strengthen them where I misunderstand them.
Okay,
Sure.
so go ahead, TJump.
Tell us Pascal's wager. Go ahead.
My way?
Yep.
All right, well, I guess the basic premises operate that in the most simplest form, if there is no God and you're a Christian, then it's basically neutral to slightly negative. At least it's finite. And if there is no God and you're an atheist, you get finite gain, or it's neutral. But if there is a God and you're Christian, you have infinite to gain. And if there is a God and you're atheist, you have infinite to lose. I would also argue that just I guess from another pragmatic position, that being Christian, even if God isn't real, provides other benefits like mental health and things like that. I think like overall, I think Christians are proven to be happier people, and it's just easier for like moral justifications of things and stuff like that. But I don't want to overcomplicate it, so just keep it in like the simpler terms that you have finite to lose or gain as a Christian and atheist, and you have everything to lose if you're an atheist.
Do you think that gambling is a good thing to use to guide your life?
I mean, I don't think it's good. No, not necessarily, but that's because most of the time it's stacked against you. But if you want to consider any risk a gamble, then I would say maybe I would change my definitions there. But for example, if there was a lottery and there was it costed like $1 to enter, and 10 people, there was 100 people playing, and the win was $1,000, then you should probably play that lottery because there's like a high enough chance that you're gonna win compared to losing.
That sounds like out of 100 people playing, you've got 1 out of 100 chances of winning and 99 out of 100 chances of losing. Pascal's wager, also known as a gambit, is a form of gambling. You're playing the odds. You're playing with different possible situations, and it's got a couple of problems. I would suggest take a look at rationalwiki.com and look up Pascal's wager there, because they lay out all the problems with it very well. But the two issues that I have with it is, one is it doesn't specify which deity, and it excludes polytheism because it's very focused on monotheism, the way it's often presented. But the other part of the problem with it is that when people are presenting it as a reason to believe in some god, part of some religion, that to me should be the end of it. But it seems to me that it's actually a form of false advertising, because as soon as somebody joins a religion based on Pascal's wager, then they find that there's a whole bunch of other things they have to do, and that wasn't presented to them in the initial wager. So there's more than meets the eye. So it's problematic in at least those 2 points. I'm sure others here have different critiques of it as well.
Indeed, I agree with everything Randolph just said. Not only is it gambling, can I tell you why it's a bad gamble? Because from first glance, it looks like we have a roulette table that is just your God versus no God. And so, I mean, with just that on the roulette table, why not take that gamble? But that's not the actual gamble. What it is no God, your God, the Muslim God, the Hindu gods, the almost infinite amount of gods, even the possibility that the God that you selected actually wants you to only believe on good evidence, and if there's no good evidence, you should be an atheist. An infinite amount of possibilities, and you're now going to accept all of the baggage that comes along with that religion on the 1 in an infinite chance that you may be right based on no evidence.
I think you guys are misunderstanding Pascal's wager. It's not a gamble, because the point is you're going to die. So you're already entered into the gamble. It's not like you're choosing to gamble something that you're already losing. It's a free bet. So it's a free lottery ticket, more or less. Secondly, the things that are entailed in religion is irrelevant to Pascal's wager. It doesn't matter. Literally, the only thing Pascal's wager says is if you believe in God. That's the only thing you have to agree to. Nothing else whatsoever to the wager. That's it. So Pascal's wager is, if you believe in God and there is a God, you get infinite reward. If you believe in a God and there's no God, you just die, finite, 0. If there is no God and you believe, you get 0, and you don't believe, you get 0. And so it's like infinite in one category of positive reward and 0 in the rest, essentially. But the problem with Pascal's wager is the probability of getting an infinite reward is exactly the same in every single one of the boxes, with or without a God. So if there is a God and you believe, you could get infinite reward. Of course, there's also the possibility that there's a different kind of God that will reward only people who don't believe. So there could be a God and you don't believe, and you get infinite reward. And it could be the case that there's an infinite reward with no God. So let's say there's like the Brahman or something, some fundamental force or essence of nature with no God that gives you infinite reward. So if there is no God, and say this force requires belief or something, it's just some arbitrary rule, then if there is no God and you believe in a God, you get infinite reward. It could be the case that this thing exists and it requires you to not believe in a God. So say there is no God and you believe there's no God, you get infinite reward. So the probability of getting infinite reward is the exact same under every single one of these categories. And the probability of getting infinite punishment is the exact same under every one of these categories. So you could believe in a God and there is a God, but he's the kind that sends you to infinite punishment if you believe in him. So in that case, you get infinite negative reward, punishment, or whatever. Same thing could apply to every one of the categories. So the problem with Pascal's wager is that whether there is a God or there is no God, the probability of getting infinite reward or infinite punishment is the exact same under every single category. It begs the question and assumes that there is a specific kind of a God and a specific kind of a no God out of the infinitely many variabilities of both categories.
I agree with most of that, especially at the end. It's not a free lottery ticket because once again, it gets all of the baggage of the individual religion that you are accepting.
Amy, it doesn't say any of that. The only part of Pascal's wager is you believe in God. So it omits the rest. It has nothing to do with Christianity. It's literally just saying, it doesn't care. The only part of Pascal's wager is if you believe in a God and there is a God that lets you into heaven for believing. That's it. There's literally nothing else in Pascal's
So it
wager.
is a God that accepts you into heaven. And no, specifically, it was the Christian God. It was him very much saying, why not believe in the Christian God? Because you have no reason not to. You get all of the advantage of actually going to get to heaven for just saying, why not?
Pascal's wager is irrelevant to all of that. Pascal was specifically trying to say there is a reason to believe in a God, even if there's no evidence of God, which means it doesn't tell you what kind of God is. I literally just had like a conversation with this on an expert in Pascal's wager, Lawrence Pasternak. Is the fact of the matter. The whole point of Pascal's argument is here is a reason to believe with no evidence. That's literally the purpose he wrote the argument for us.
And that is why Pascal's wager is a bad wager.
Sorry to interrupt, but I feel like I would agree more with like Pascal's wager. The whole point is the whole point of it is that it's like standalone, that there shouldn't be any other evidence that goes with it. But I would say that, don't you think that if we conclude that betting on a God is better than not betting on a God, even if like you're betting on for example, a God that favors atheists, that would say, it's better to be atheist than not, then that's still hedging on the fact that there would be an atheist God. So wouldn't you want to prove the most likely of all of these options?
There's no such thing as an atheist God, like one that atheists believe in, because of what atheists.
I mean, like a hypothetical like God that would like favor atheists to like even it out to say like
it doesn't matter.
Oh, it does. So his question is if there is a God who allows atheists into heaven, then we get into heaven. If there's a God who allows theists into heaven, we get into heaven. So either way, to get into heaven, you need a God. So I addressed this in my very beginning part. If there is no God, there can still be a heaven, like the Brahman, just a force of heaven. And so even if there's no God, you can still get into heaven. Whether there's a God who allows believers into heaven, there can be a God who allows non-believers into heaven. There can be no God who allows believers into heaven. Like there's just a force of heaven, like a heaven force or something. And there can be no God who allows disbelievers into heaven. So whether or not there is a God, the probabilities are the same. So it is not only the case that you get into heaven if there's a God, regardless of whether or not it's atheist or Christian. You can still get into heaven with no God.
It sort of sounds like conjuring up a square of opposition.
Well, what I would say to that is that I think that you have to. It's like the most rational to say like pick the most likely out of all those gods. So, for example, or if you want to say, well, there's forces that like aren't
all
gods
equally
that you can
likely.
play, there can be heaven without God.
They are all equally likely. That's the point.
Well, I'm saying that I don't believe they're all equally likely. I mean, you can say, for example, okay, we can broaden the goal.
Remember before where you said the point of Pascal's wager is there is no other evidence, right? It's its own standalone thing. So if it's its own standalone thing, the probability of each of these gods is exactly the same.
I think it's its own standalone thing in proving that you need to pick a religion, but it's not its own standalone thing in proving, deciding between which religion that exactly is.
No. So here's the point that Pascal missed. He didn't understand that there could still be a heaven with no religion, with no God. So there can be a heaven, just a force of nature that gives us an afterlife, with no God, which means you don't need to believe in a God to do that.
Are you saying there could be like this could be within like an atheist worldview? There could be a heaven with no God that we just haven't had any like evidence for it, like discovered at all.
Yep.
Oh no, I understand what you're saying.
The wager's making theological assumptions, which are ruling out and ignoring all the other possible ways things could be. And when you include all the other possible things that could be, it's not the way that the argument puts it. The argument is just like, even though the argument claims to be standalone, it's just smuggling in like Judeo-Christian assumptions, which aren't even they're not even a consensus amongst Judeo-Christians. There's annihilationists. There's earlier like Judaism, which didn't have heaven in the way that it evolved later because of Zoroastrianism, etc. Judeo-Christians don't even all agree on this version of how hell and heaven is supposed to work. Why would it be that those are the only two possibilities, given that there's so many other possibilities that are completely different?
Sorry for the lack of articulation and all that, but I think that the chances of there being a God or a heaven without a God are much less likely. So I think Pascal's wager, like the point of it, or maybe that's not what he originally intended, but the purposes I'm using it for, it doesn't really matter to me what he originally intended, but like, what matters is the arguments used to me specifically. So I think that in general, it's used to prove that believing in some sort of religion as opposed to not believing in some sort of religion is beneficial, whether that means believing in heaven without a God. Now, once we already get to that stage, we're not operating without evidence anymore like the argument states, because we've already gone past that point. So now, in my mind at least, you have to pick the most rational and likely of all of those options. And so the exclusivity of it is actually what strengthens it, in my opinion, where some religions, right, atheists, for example, would get annihilated. Maybe you wouldn't want to bet on that religion as much because there's just not as much as a reward, not as much of a reward. And I think when all these religions, the ones that are left, once you root out all the other ones that don't give you the best reward, and there's only religions that give you infinite reward or infinite punishment left, then you can look, I think it's intuitive to look at, first of all, like, I don't know how to say, like, the intensity of the heaven. Like, obviously, over an infinite amount of time, you could feel a little good, and that would be infinite good, or, like, a very good, and that would be infinite good. But, like, ideally, you would obviously pick the one that's, like, more dense with, like, how good you feel, if you understand what I mean, like, the more dense and luxury. So I feel like you would look at that, and then you would also look at which one is the most probable, right? So I think that our conception of infinity maybe is like a little too flawed and not really developed yet to be able to like make it work on paper. But I think intuitively you can measure infinities in that way. In this case.
Can I ask you a question? Did you have some background of like your family or other reasons that you grew up around Christianity?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The thing that happens to be the case with a lot of religious arguments is that they seem intuitive to people who have some kind of background in Christianity, even if they're not like currently, saying that they're Christian, but they're still like pulled towards a lot of Christian views, and they'll say, "Oh, this seems intuitive." And everyone who didn't grow up that way is like scratching their head, like, "What are you talking about?" If someone were to say to you, like in an email, for instance, that they'll give you $1 billion, and you just need to put $1,000 in this bank account so they can send you the $1 billion or whatever, are you going to take that seriously?
No, not really.
Okay, but what if you grew up in a family where the people in your family said that a long time ago, a very important man put $1,000 in a bank account and he received $1 billion, and now everyone who believes in him will also get $1 billion if they put $1,000 in that bank account?
I would actually. I'm sorry for interrupting if I did, but I feel like I would actually have evidence for that because I know based off of previous experience that let's say more often than not my family gets things right. Let's say that more often than not, they don't lie to me. It's not like philosophically or theoretically impossible for this man to want to give me that money. So if my family told me, I don't see why I wouldn't believe it. But I think that's different because the point you're trying to make is like into me being indoctrinated into it, right? I still don't know what I think about like the sect of my religion. If I like really agree with every single like doctrine it has, I don't know. I don't share any of the same politics as anyone in my friend group, for example. So I feel like in the case of like indoctrination and assimilation, I would just assimilate to like, you know, maybe friends and family and issues like politics and like other like theological issues, but that just isn't what's happening. So just because I happen to agree with them on something doesn't mean that I was necessarily indoctrinated into it, if you understand what I mean. But I definitely agree. There was a point probably where I couldn't justify the existence of a god or something like that. I just like believed it because it was like convenient. I think everyone's done that for their personal beliefs before.
Yeah, the
I
point
just
is
don't think it's as widespread as what you're saying it is.
when someone makes, well, it's, I mean, I would say it's universal, not just widespread, but universal, right? We're always going to be more leaning towards intuitions that we find favorable, even if we can't justify them, if they seem familiar to us and are like part of our background, how we grew up and so on. But the point is that in the case of this extreme example, like someone saying, give me this finite amount and I will give you an infinite reward, we have background reasons or like massively greater reward in the case of the billion for the 1,000, right? We have background reasons to think that it's absurd. We have background reasons to think that it's a common scam, et cetera, et cetera. So when people make claims like that, we just dismiss it. We don't even like click to open the email. We just like laugh and delete it or whatever. We have automated filters that can detect these kinds of messages and just delete them before we even read them because we put zero credence, less than zero credence, to the point where we're not even going to look at those kinds of messages anymore. The question is, why should you believe a claim that promises something that has background reasons to be absurd, like an infinite reward for some like seemingly arbitrary finite action that you need to take to get it, when we have strong evidence that there's psychological and historical reasons for people to use this kind of thing to manipulate and control a large group of people, or to just be deluded themselves into thinking this is true because they really want this reward. So it seems like there's much stronger reasons to think that as a whole, things like Pascal's wager are a symptom of people's wishful thinking and make-believe rather than a wager that should be taken seriously. I understand that if you're just talking about Pascal's wager as just like a theoretic problem, you can say, well, there's no evidence either way. We're just talking about it as a theoretic problem. But as for why you would find it persuasive, I think these issues are important.
Well, I like that you brought up the fact that people often can lie to themselves and pick what they believe in rather than going off of rationality, because I think that's actually one of the major objections to Pascal wager, that you can't control what you believe. You won't really believe it if you pick it. You're just doing it to serve your self-interest, which I don't know why a god would even dislike self-interest, but we're not talking about that objection right now. So
yeah, I don't need to psychologize about the motives of the Nigerian prince in the scam email. I just know that it's a scam because there's no reason to think otherwise, right?
But he said he was my cousin.
Here's why. Here's why I think one of them is an obvious scam and the other one isn't an obvious scam. Like why these two situations are different. So for one of them, we have a lot of precedent of people saying, "Hey, I'm going to give you $1 billion," and then like just completely ripping you off and scamming you. So we have precedent. We have reasons to believe that's just completely illogical, because why would someone like ever want to do that? Like that's just
the precedent could also be referred to as the sucker rate. So the reason that the people make those scam emails is that a certain number of people do fall for them and do send the money. That's why they're successful enough that they keep sending them. So yeah, having a sucker rate does not mean that the evidence shows that it's true. What would be evidence would be if you could show a claim that those people believed in that was validated, not just that they believed it. Their belief is just like an argument ad populum. The success of the proposition, the offer, the wager being actually delivered, would be evidence. You can't produce that, so there is no evidence to the support of the claim. Just evidence that people believed it and are suckers.
Oh, well, I agree with you there, but as I was saying, so I just think like, where was I? Like, we have reasons to think, because of prior experience, why the scam email is obviously a scam, because we've noticed patterns where people tend to say, hey, I'm going to give you $1 billion, and even if it's never been done before, we know that people just don't give $1 billion, because we've seen this in situations other than emails, right? For example, no one just randomly walks up to people in the middle of the road and says, I'm going to give you $1 billion. So we just have previous experience of this to know that this is just something that never happened. Now, we don't have any experience of God. We don't have any experience of general things like this. And I know you might bring up previous religions being used to control people and say, well, that was kind of the scam email in a sense, where it's being used to control people. But the absolute worst case is that I have to alter the argument in a way where I would only believe in a denomination that would not make me adhere to following some living person. You know what I'm saying? I think when I talked about picking in the most probable, I think if that person is still alive and stands to gain from you believing in that religion, that definitely makes it less probable. If people had something to gain from lying to people about it, then that definitely lowers it on the probability. So then you could just make the filter even smaller and just say, well, religions where people didn't really stand to gain much will be heightened in the probability thing. And you
Well, let me
understand
put it
what I'm
this way.
saying?
It seems to me like, in my experience, all the people I've ever talked to about Pascal's wager, the ones who think it has any force or weight or give it any consideration are ones who, for some reason or another, actually are afraid of going to hell, right? Maybe it's just a 5% doubt, but hell is a really scary concept. Scaring people with the concept of hell is traumatic for a lot of people who stop believing. They still have nightmares about hell decades after they stop believing in a god, because it's a very scary concept, right? I have nightmares about falling off of cliffs because I used to drive on a narrow road that had a cliff that every time, when I was a little kid, we would drive on it, I would be afraid that we were going to fall off of it. I still have those nightmares to this day because something that happened scared me a lot when I was a kid, and it left marks in my psyche. So being afraid of the concept of hell and taking it seriously comes from having some point in your life where you took this idea seriously enough that it was actually scary to you, that it still scares you to this day. You don't have that. This argument doesn't have force.
I mean, I would actually disagree there. I'm not really that scared of it. I think my bigger motivation towards saying it has force is that a lot of the other arguments are very developed. People talk about them a lot already, and I just I don't know. I feel like talking about it has a sense of originality and making sure that no potential for any argument goes wasted, because I don't really see people trying to defend it all that much. So I guess in a sense, I have a bias towards it because I like playing devil's advocate in that way. But
Yeah, fair enough.
I think that you saying that I have ulterior motive to believing in the argument doesn't really prove why it's false. It just proves why I might try to justify it. But I could try to justify something because it benefits me, and it could also be true.
Yeah, I already clarified that. I'm just saying that the reasons that people tend to think that this kind of thing is real, just like the reasons why people might fall for a scam, are to do with their background and whether or not they have any familiarity with this type of scam, or whether they were afraid of the scam being real at some point.
Will I explain? Well, if it shares the characteristics of a scam, then I think that it would go down on the probability ranking, and you might want to consider a different faith in my theoretical scenario. But I noticed TJump unmuted himself, so I'm curious to what he has to say.
Well, did you understand my argument that it's equally as likely you're going to go to heaven with or without a god?
Yes, and I think that well, I don't know if it's equally likely, but my answer to that would be just not narrow it down to God and just broaden it to religion, and then look at the most likely one, because I don't think Pascal's wager is telling you what religion to pick. It's telling you to pick a religion over atheism. So you're extending it to a debate that it's not trying to talk about. So it's
No, so I'm including it to
for
all
example, a
beliefs.
Muslim,
Your
a
belief,
Christian, and a Jew.
just to clarify, you can believe that let's say you eat jelly donuts on a Tuesday, you can get into heaven, or you pick your nose on a Wednesday, you can go to heaven. And those are equally as likely actions to get you into heaven as belief in a God. So the fact that you believe in a God or pick a religion is no more or less likely to get you into heaven other than scratching your butt on the solstice of Venus. Like, there's no difference between that particular belief, believing in a religion or believing in a God, getting you into heaven than any other random set of actions.
I disagree. Some religions have more historicism. Some of them have made more accurate predictions than others. Some of them have contradictions. Some of them just don't have reasons to believe in them. Some of them.
Wait. So Pascal's wager is, again, an argument presented before any evidence is considered. So a priori, before we consider any of the evidence, like obviously if we proved God existed or something, like if Jesus actually came back from the dead and started talking to us, that would be good evidence that that belief system was true. But before we have any of those other external evidences, if we're just looking at Pascal's wager, there is no a priori difference in probability between getting into heaven believing in Christianity or getting into heaven believing in the super force of the universe. And so just the point of Pascal's wager of being an independent argument fails because without considering independent evidence, it gives us nothing to prioritize one belief in God versus scratching your butt on a Tuesday, because the probability of getting to heaven is exactly the same. So I would agree that if there is independent evidence, which I don't think there is, then that independent evidence is good reason to prioritize one belief over another. Pascal's wager is not. Pascal's wager does nothing.
I believe that you are extending it like farther than it should be. So for example, if I were to bring up the cosmological argument, the point of the cosmological argument is to get me from point A to point B, not point A to point C. So it's to bring me from the debate on whether a God, if atheism or theism is true or not, to bring me to theism is true, which one is true. So I look at Pascal's wager the same way. I think you're extending it like too much. So I think.
Well, just to clarify, so Pascal's wager is meant to give you a reason to believe in a God prior to any evidence. That's
I know.
So my point is that believing in a God based on Pascal's wager gives you 0% evidence or zero more likeliness to get to heaven than not believing. Therefore, Pascal's wager does not give you a reason to believe in a God over not God. So the whole point of the argument is here is a reason to believe in a God over belief or not believing in a God. And my argument is that's wrong because not believing in a God based on Pascal's wager is equally as likely to get you into heaven. Therefore, Pascal's wager fails because it does not provide you a reason to believe in a God.
Can you agree that believing in some like force in the universe, believing in a heaven even without a God, can you agree that that is a religion, or do we disagree there?
Maybe, but I would, again, so my point is believing and not believing have an equal probability of getting you the infinite reward. So even if like we can just grant, let's say believing in the force of nature is a religion or whatever, not believing in the force of nature and not believing in God are both equally likely to get you to heaven as believing.
I think we're like not seeing like. I don't think I'm understanding, like we're understanding each other very well here. So what I mean is Pascal's wager is to get you from atheism to theism, right? And so you can say, well, this is irrational because whether like they're both just as likely, but it's not true atheism that is just as likely. It's atheists that happen to also get the infinite reward of heaven that is just as likely, which is...
That's equally possible. So again, Pascal was begging the question. He was assuming atheism entails that there is no infinite reward. He's wrong. That's just his baseless assumption. There is no such entailment in atheism for that claim. So if he wants to say, let's say infinite reward versus not infinite reward, you have a reason to believe in infinite reward. Well, no, because again, not believing in infinite reward, you're still equally as likely to get the infinite reward. So the belief, the action of believing or not believing is 0% more likely to get you more reward than the alternative. So belief or reason to believe, it does not provide any reason to believe. It does not provide any reason to not believe. It provides no reason to do anything because none of those have any increased probability of getting the reward, whether or not there is a reward.
Being an atheist and getting such a reward implies that there is, like, applies that the reward exists in the first place.
Yes.
Right? So,
Which is
okay,
perfectly
okay.
compatible with atheism.
Okay, no. I agree. Or not really, like, agree, but, like, I understand what you're saying. So, what I'm saying is that I don't really want to go back and forth and like in circles here, but atheism, like the reward from atheism, if atheism does get a reward, it is a religion that rewards atheism. So you'd still be completely rational to be an
No.
atheist.
No.
Is
Again.
it not?
There's two possibilities. There is an atheism that rewards believers, and there is an atheism that rewards disbelievers. There's two different possibilities, though. Just like a God who rewards believers, and a God who rewards disbelievers, like a God who puts atheists into heaven but puts theists into hell. Each of those possibilities could exist. So if there's an atheist universe that rewards disbelievers, you not believing in a God and not believing in a heaven is what gets you the infinite reward.
No, I know what you're saying. It's just like there's also an atheism, the one I assume you believe in. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but an atheism that does not reward believers and does not reward disbelievers. It's neutral because there's no evidence to prove in a heaven.
There is a God who also doesn't reward believers and doesn't reward disbelievers.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. But
so it's a one-to-one correlation. All of the possibilities of God and all of the possibilities of the universe have a one-to-one correlation. There's a God who rewards believers. There's a universe who rewards believers. There's a God who rewards disbelievers. There's a universe who rewards disbelievers. There's a God who rewards no one. There's a universe who rewards no one. The probability of getting into heaven under a God-based universe and a non-God-based universe is exactly the same for both believers and unbelievers. Every category.
Right, so yeah, but a Christian God that rewards believers is more likely than a Christian God that does not reward believers once we get past the atheism versus theism debate into the which religion are we choosing debate. Right? So once we cross that bridge, obviously one is more rational than the other to believe. I think.
When you do that, you have to also do the same thing on the other side, the no God side. So what you've done is you've taken a particular religious model where there are some doctrines that God is a certain way or whatever. And in order to make an accurate mirror of that, you have to say, here's a universe, and I'm going to add particular properties to this universe. So it allows, say there's universe, we're going to call it the potato model. And it's the universe, and it has a particular property to allow in believers to heaven. And so now it's a parallel to God. So in this universe, obviously, if this universe exists, it's more likely to get into heaven if you're a believer than if you're not, because it's the potato property of the universe or whatever. And so again, the probabilities are exactly the same, whether or not there's a God, because if you're going to add specific properties to your model of God, then that you have to do to the alternative side and add particular properties to the universe model. And again, that's just one of the infinitely many ways the universe could be. And when you do this, you find out that the probability is exactly a one-to-one correlation to getting into heaven for any belief or any action, whether or not there's a God, and there's no difference probabilistically in any of them.
The universe model has already crossed the line of Pascal's way. Like there's a line between these two debates here, the debate of what God, and then like the debate of should you believe in a religion or not, should you be theistic or not. And so on one side there's neutral atheism, and then you cross the line where it's rational, or Pascal's wager works. I'm not saying it like works in the sense where you have to like pick a religion. I'm saying it works in the sense where atheism where no one gets rewarded and theism where no one gets rewarded is ruled out, where like that's cut out. That obviously doesn't help anyone, right? So those are irrational beliefs to hold. So once you cross that line where you leave like those other ones behind, like the filter of Pascal's wager, then you get to question, okay, which of these religions is the most true? Because this theism versus atheism debate is like already over at this point.
No,
And
again,
once you
those are not irrational beliefs to hold. Believing that there is no heaven, so believing that there's a God who rewards no one, or believing that there's a universe who rewards no one, is still a rational belief, because the probability of that belief getting you the infinite reward is exactly the same as the probability of believing that it's not the case will get you the reward. The point is that which belief you have increases the probability by nothing. And so both probabilities are equally rational, regardless of the truth. So if you're saying, if it's the truth that there is a heaven that gets you reward, then that would be better. Sure, I would agree. It'd be better if there's a truth that gets you a reward. But Pascal's wager is arguing there is a reason to believe, to have a particular kind of belief over a different particular kind of belief. And his reason is that if you have this kind of belief, you are more likely to get to heaven. But if that statement is false, and you are not more likely to get to heaven because you have the exact same probability of getting to heaven if you have the disbelief, then his original argument is proven false because you no longer have a reason to prefer one of the beliefs over the other belief, even if we grant that for this to be the case, there has to be a heaven. Did he leave?
Yeah, looks like he left. Maybe his wager came through for him.
He's still there.
He said his audio's not working. He DM'd me. Something's wrong with his audio.
So that was a pretty in-depth view of Pascal's wager, and TJump, thank you for laying things out so succinctly. You've given me some things to think about. I will be listening back to this section because these are some new perspectives for me, and I found it fascinating. Were we just speaking with Childish? Is that right?
Yeah. And TJump, do you have a video? You said that you just did like a conversation with somebody who's an expert on this particular topic. Do you have a video you could refer us to?
The newest one on my channel with Lawrence Pasternak, I guess.
Cool. So everyone who wants to learn more about this can watch Lawrence Pasternak interview with TJump on TJump's YouTube.
Oh yeah, and if someone wants to post a link in the chat, I'll relay to the YouTube chat. Welcome back, Childish. I was jokingly saying that maybe your wager came through for you, and that's why you disappeared.
I heard you. It's just every once in a while. So, like I have 2 Discord accounts, and like the phone verification thing messed up. So whenever someone tries calling me on my other account, I can't hang up, and it completely destroys the audio in my browser version of Discord. It's horrible.
Yeah. I know.
And I have to
Discord's got
leave and
some
rejoin
funny
the call.
issues that way. Yeah.
Well, yes. Yeah. But I want to continue this discussion, but I want to do it in a way where it's like not circular, because I feel like I'm saying one thing and he's like saying the same response, and I'm saying the same response to that, and like, you know, it's going back and forth. So I'm trying to figure out where we can move this in like a new direction that's not like
Well, we got to keep in mind that we are starting to run low on time, so because we need to wrap this up in about 10
I'll
minutes.
let the next guy speak if you want.
No. What I'm saying is, if it's something that you think will take a while, we'd be happy to do it, but perhaps perhaps next month, if that's okay with you. Like, because we've covered quite a lot here with Pascal's wager. And we'd be happy to give you a minute or so to sum up if you want that.
I mean, I'd love to do that. I have no objection to that. That sounds amazing to me.
Okay, yeah. We just want to be not rushed because we gotta we're gonna end up at about an hour early today. But next month we'd be happy to bring you up again and talk some more, because this was quite an interesting discussion, I think.
I had a good time talking to all of you. So.
Also, TJump's video with Lawrence Pasternak, did anyone find the link to it? And would you be interested in watching that to understand more about what he's talking about?
Yeah, I'm interested in watching that. Sure.
Does anybody have the link for him? I'm trying to find it on your YouTube, TJump. I'm not finding it.
Click on lives and go to YouTube.
Oh, live. Okay. Okay, so it's a live stream, which is separate from the video list, so you have to click on live to find it. Okay, great. Lawrence Pasternak, I found it. Okay, I'm going to DM it to you, Childish.
You post it in the chat or leave it for me and I'll post it everywhere.
I mean, I got what I wanted. I specifically wanted to talk to TJump because I remember that debate he did on Modern Day Debate like 3 years. I don't know how many years ago it was now on Pascal's wager.
TJump's done a lot of debates. He's very good at it.
It got me interested
Yeah.
in this, so
Awesome.
I guess I'll let the next guy go up then.
Well, thank you, Childish. We appreciate it, and we look forward to speaking with you again next month.
Goodbye.
So I'm just bringing up, I guess there's going to be the last person here. Let's ask the shrub. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us. What's on your mind, sir?
Well, you guys are definitely interesting, and TJump, if you happen to be the same fellow that used to be called Xerxes, I'm with you, brother. I love your work, by the way. But anyway, so purely as an aside, I find myself challenged with the quandary of the perennial search for evidence. And this is why it's a quandary for me. If I have a friend who is, agnostic or what have you, and is always looking for things, should I trust any of his positions? Can I trust that he's going to be a good friend and look out for me and put my best interest first? Or is it possible that he could find evidence that, either being selfish, or self-dealing or even physically harmful could be of his momentary benefit, that he might flip on me?
That's a possibility. Like, this is you're dealing with interpersonal relationships. Different people have different tolerances and standards. In business, I value an axiom, trust but verify. That it works quite well. So, there's certain people that you can trust, and there's others you may not know so well, or you may know that they have certain ethical tolerances that are different in certain areas. That again, it boils down to interpersonal skills. But the short answer is you should trust nobody, and try to use some kind of rigorous critical thinking or skeptical approach to making sure that what they're telling you and what they're promising you is correct. But the reality is we don't have time for that. So that's why we build these relationships and have to trust people. We have no choice but to trust people in many circumstances. The person rescuing us when we're drowning, we don't have time to question if they're actually trying to rescue us. We just go for it, right? So it's kind of a hit and miss. You have to look at the situation and decide, is it appropriate to question it. Some people, if they're going to tell you something minor, like they believe in a certain deity, it tends to be no problem to just go ahead and trust that. But if they're telling you something that's really going to have a strong impact on your life, you'd probably be better off to kind of check on things and verify these things.
So I'd say no. I say that'd be completely wrong.
Okay.
you would need evidence that someone who requires evidence would be more or less likely to betray you. That would be the question you're asking. Because the question you're asking, if someone requires evidence, should I trust that they're going to maintain, I don't know, friendship or whatever, their personality trait? In order to answer that question, you would need to find out if someone who does seek evidence is more or less likely than someone who does not seek evidence to change their personality. I would be willing to bet a significant portion of money that the person who requires evidence is less likely to change their belief system than the person who does not require evidence. Because if they do not require evidence, if they do not have a threshold to change beliefs, then they are more likely to change beliefs than someone who does have a threshold to change beliefs. But then your question is implying that the further end, what if their threshold is they cannot change their belief, like infinite requirement or something, and they have no threshold that is an unmeetable threshold or something? That person is probably a crazy person. So having a rational threshold that you can change your belief system based on evidence is a rational thing to have. And then if you're asking, well, maybe that means he could change your position to do bad things. Well, sure. If there was like a lot of evidence in the universe that killing one person would save 1 million people, and there's a lot of evidence that you should do this, and maybe that person would turn on you and kill you. But that's probably a good thing at that point that they did that. If there's a ton of evidence that it's going to save millions of lives to kill you, then yeah, the reason they did it was probably a very good reason. And so changing your beliefs based on sufficient evidence is a positive trait, not a negative trait.
That's excellent points, TJump. I agree with you.
Okay. Well, I mean, to me, the challenge comes from if you are constantly evaluating based upon new evidence, then you're also open to receiving what could be misleading information. You know, there's always a possibility that someone's going to whisper some gossip in your ear and say, you know, this guy's probably not on the level, and you know, if you have an opportunity to make money or take advantage of this other person, then go for it, man. I mean, you know, because you know they may not pan out in the long term, and
Well, it doesn't make sense, because if someone requires evidence for something, they would require evidence for that claim too. So if someone brings in a new claim that challenges their position, they'd say, okay, what's the evidence? Because they're open to evidence, they would be looking for it in all of the challenging beliefs. And so the only beliefs that would become, I don't know, believed by this person would be the ones that can supply real, genuine evidence that they're not just figments of their imagination. And that's a good standard. Yes. So the only reason you would think this person would turn on you is if they have good evidence, or whatever their standard of evidence is, to do so, which is a very good reason to trust them.
Okay. So what would qualify, if you're agnostic, what would qualify someone as trustworthy?
What would qualify someone as trustworthy? Like
how long would you have to get to know someone before you'd say, you know what, they're trustworthy?
I don't know, but I'd say that for someone to be trustworthy, their standard of evidence would have to be something like science. And if they have a standard of evidence like science, in order to...
Okay, so if they believe in the Big Bang Theory, does that mean you can trust them with, you know, say, watching your dog?
Well, again, these are different beliefs. So if you're asking about someone who is skeptical and is applying a skeptical rationale, and what makes their skeptical rationale reasonable, it would have to conform to science. Now, trustworthiness and whether a person's moral values and personal values...
No, just trustworthiness.
No,
you know,
like
stop, you're going on vacation for 2 weeks, and they say they're willing to
understand
house
what you're saying. Stop. These are
Mhm.
two separate systems of ideas. You can be perfectly skeptical and rational and be a narcissist who just steals everything from everyone. There is no correlation to the amount of skepticism you have and your personal ability to steal stuff. There is zero correlation to these two beliefs. Nothing correlates them. You could be a Christian pastor who believes in a God and has no skepticism whatsoever. You just have blind faith in God, and be a pedo priest. There is absolutely zero correlation to the amount of skepticism and the amount of trustworthiness. None whatsoever. Two different ideologies.
There's actually
this is where
but if person A and person B are both agnostic, how should person A evaluate whether person B is trustworthy?
Give them money and see if they steal it.
I think you're also just you're making an assumption implied in all of your statements that the alternative is, if the two people are Christian, then well, that somehow settles the matter or makes things completely different, right? But what we find...
I'm trying to say, if in the absence of any Christendom, in the absence of any, you know, shared belief structure, what should you evaluate someone else for their trustworthiness by? What standard would you hold them to?
That last part that you said, the lack of a shared belief structure, isn't...
No, I'm saying if we wipe the table clean and say there's absolutely no Christianity, there's no God, there's no religion, there's no shared belief structure, we're both agnostics. How do I trust you?
The same. There is no difference between whether we have a shared belief structure or whether we do not have a shared belief structure. The shared belief structure is zero evidence of anything, whether or not you're trustworthy. It provides nothing. It's garbage, complete nothing. Right. The reason you should trust someone is if they have a history of being trustworthy, loaning money to them and they give it back, completing their promises, not stabbing you in the back. If they have a history of being trustworthy, that's a good reason to trust them.
Okay.
Which is what I was basically alluding to at the very beginning. relationships.
Okay.
It also opens the possibility that you are giving people a false trust for a reason that's just they're supposed to be in my group. You go, well, hey, this guy can't be selling me snake oil. He told me he's a Christian.
Yes, judging people based off of a similar ideology is what fools do. It's called an appeal to authority fallacy.
Yep.
That's why there's pedo priests. You should never trust someone because they have a shared ideology. That's a dumb idea. Don't do that.
Indeed.
Okay. I mean, if somebody says that, that they want to join ISIS and they want to be a freedom fighter, should I just give them a shot and say, yeah, you can watch my house for a month?
If they have a history of being trustworthy people and never harming anybody, maybe.
Right. Okay.
But if someone says they want to, like, I don't know, love Jesus and want to be with Jesus in eternity, and they're wearing a little like white thing around their neck, do you think you should let them be alone with your kids?
Well, I do favor this idea of just seeding the pot and saying, you know what, we're going to give incremental or opportunistic chances for someone to prove their trustworthiness. That we'll just start from square one and as we'll give you a small shot. And if you don't steal small amounts of money, and then you don't steal medium amounts of money, and then you don't steal large amounts of money, then you've proven at least your creditworthiness.
Right. So, but just because someone shares an ideology, so he's Christian, has a little white thing around his neck, says he wants to spend time with your kids, do you trust him because he shares the ideology?
I know what I'm looking for a method to operate fairly with someone who's non-theistic.
No. I'm saying if he is theistic, because you keep making a contrast between theistic versus non-theistic, and the standard should apply to both equally. Now, the only reason you would think there would be a difference between theistic and non-theistic is if you have this bias that the fact that they're theistic inherently makes them more trustworthy. And so I'm asking you, let's say someone is theistic and wants to spend time with their kids, but you have never had any past experience with this person. Would you trust them because they believe in God? Is that a reason to trust someone, or is that just bullshit?
Well, I did trust someone who was theistic with being a nanny for my daughter when she was 0 to 1 years of age. And I gave her a 1-year contract to do that. And her faith was a major sway of why I chose her.
That's stupid. You probably shouldn't do that. That's what happened to all the pedo priests. Is their parents did that, and their parents and their kids were molested because they believed him for that reason. That's stupid. Don't do that.
Well, but if someone has really profound warmth, really profound
but they really believe
sense of duty and purpose, it's really hard to argue against that. That's all I'm saying. And it doesn't matter if it's theism or non-theism, but I'm saying if someone's really got an overpowering...
It's really easy. It's called a con man. Con men literally have that. They've literally trained their personalities to be that because people are gullible.
She wasn't a con man, but at the end of the day, she also then encouraged to line her up with a husband who ended up being really messed up. So it didn't work.
What about the logic here? Don't you understand? Con men use confidence to manipulate you. Not everyone is a con man, but simply trusting someone stop talking. Just simply trusting someone based on their level of confidence or the fact that they share some kind of ideological value is what a fool does. Do not do that. Use evidence, not confidence.
All right.
Yeah, if you're gonna go do business with someone, look at their reviews, look at the people who done business with them first, and build your image that way, no matter what they believe.
Yeah, but those Amazon stars can be forged, unfortunately.
It's better than confidence.
Earlier point.
Yes. Better evidence. It's better evidence.
That was my earlier point.
I have a dog, and I'm gonna take it to a groomer that I never took my dog to. What do? I look at their reviews first. I see if there's people talking about them or not, and then I will take. And through the experience, maybe after the second, third time, I didn't like their service, I will go find someone else. It's not.
Ask them what God they believe in. That's how you should decide.
I don't care. I'm an atheist that lives in South America, in the south of the United States. There's more churches here than grocery stores, so there's a high chance they believe in God. I don't care.
Well, at least they believe in going to church and giving money to a church.
I don't care what they believe, as long as they're gonna do a good job.
Pedo priests also do that. Not a great standard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you
but
think it's-
I don't know if I wanted to choose a pedo priest for raising my infant. I don't know. I'm just.
Do you think that donating
wouldn't
money
prefer
to do you think that donating money to the Christian churches is a good thing?
Well, it's evidenced by the construction of churches. When they're given money, they build it.
Yeah, that doesn't answer
It's
my
evidence.
question though.
Oh boy.
I asked you if you think that's a
I'm
good
just
thing.
saying, it's evidence that they raised money. If they didn't raise money, they'd still be in like a high school or something. Or
Yeah, but I'm asking you
out
if
in the
that's a
field.
good. I'm asking you if that's a good thing to donate money to a Christian church.
Well, I like to donate to specific causes, not just blanket en masse, money. But I recently gave a couple $1,000s for a new planting garden at my daughter's school. So
There you
they're
go.
going to get
That's
to
a
do
good thing.
Montessori planting.
That's probably a good thing to do.
Yeah, there's
But,
evidence of that being a good thing because there's research that shows that kids that do spend time outside have a whole bunch of positive outcomes compared to those that don't. So that's a great idea.
And to that, and to this end, I mean, Montessori teaching is a very evidence based, and it also gives kids a good ability to use their hands and think independently. So, but at the end of the day, the school that we chose for our daughter is, I would say, non-theistic. They don't have Christmas. They don't celebrate Christian ceremonies of any sort. There's no biblical writing or reading, and they do have children who are international from all over.
Are you
George, now, do you know that Montessori was originally created to help kids who have severe behavioral problems? We considered putting our kids in Montessori school. We decided not to, but I'm not saying the decision's right or wrong on your part. Each of the schools is run differently these days, but the history is one that's important to know, I think.
Well, you might only feel Montessori after you see the bill. Before that, you're just thinking it's a good school. Then you get hit with the big bill, and then you're definitely more sorry than Montessori. But.
So I wanted to comment on what Randolph said there. Like, a lot of things were designed in order to address a really bad problem, but that doesn't mean that implementing them to like someone who's regular in society by association makes them a bad problem. So even if Montessori was designed to help troubled kids, that doesn't mean everybody who's going to a Montessori school must be a troubled kid, because even though it was designed for that, that could still be a good or useful application to normal or excelling children as well, even if it was designed initially to deal with bad children.
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's neat in that they show small children how to do tracing of maps and stitching with yarn and all sorts of other these little tactile things to use their hands and do little basic problem solving type things. And you don't see that in most elementary schools nowadays. But anyway, I digress. But honestly though, I have a method and I have a
I have to push back on that. This is quite common here in Canada. We do have that in the elementary schools here. The thing that turned us off about the Montessori school, one particular one that we looked at when our children were very young, is that when our kid was there with us, they pulled out 2 toys from the shelf to play with and mixed them together to build some blocks. And 5 different kids walked by and spoke in a mostly monotone voice. You can only play with 1 toy at a time. Obviously, we don't want our kids there, but there's, again, we know other people who are at Montessori schools who it's working great, and they're not strict like that. So that's, again, the thing. When you're going to say you don't see this in the elementary schools, we see this kind of stuff taught in the elementary schools here in Canada. So but maybe it's different where you are.
Well, I don't trust Canadians because they don't lock their doors. I mean, anyone who walks around, with their door unlocked, I think is,
Can I ask you a question, Trent? You're a Christian, right?
Mostly.
Okay. So when I asked you if you were assuming the opposite would be the case, like that you tend to trust Christians more, and you kind of evaded and said you didn't want to talk about that, but then you gave an example of having a nanny or whatever look after your young child, and you said specifically the fact that they were religious made you trust them more. It seems like even though you didn't want to talk about that at the time, you actually do believe that just being Christian is evidence that you should trust somebody more.
Well, I mean, there's also degrees of Christianity. This is an individual who spends about 3 hours a day studying and reviewing and praying, and I mean this wasn't just a casual go on the high holidays, throw $20 in the plate and call it check the box. This was someone who had a very profound faith, and I mean I'm just saying it on this particular case. All I can say is that there are people in this world you will run into who, for lack of a better term, have a presence and almost an angelic aura to themselves, where they simply exude, a warmth and a kindness that you can't measure. Yeah. It's just it's rare. It's maybe 1 in 500 people you run into have this. It's something you can't buy.
I'm sorry to tell you, but that's just your own way of looking at her. That angelic exuberance, because that's just personal way for you to look at that person. I might look at the same person and think, no, she doesn't have anything. She's a poor woman. She have to go work with a nanny, have problems at home. So it's different, and it's being.
Well, you would think.
What?
I mean, you haven't had a chance to meet her, so I can understand your skepticism. I really do. I genuinely can empathize with that.
Ironically, the reason women are most attracted to like psychopaths and selfish guys is exactly for that reason. The confidence that they have, they exude this feeling that makes them feel all hyper energetic, and they're attracted to really assholey guys because they have that positive emotional tract. The fact that they give you that sensation is a reason you should not trust them, because that's your brain, due to evolutionary reasons, getting you to release dopamine due to their personality type, because it has a very contagious personality type. And so you should doubt them more and actually look for evidence more, not trust them for that reason. You should not trust people because you get this warm fuzzy feeling from their personality. That's a reason. That's one of the cognitive biases in your brain, not an actual evidential reason to trust them.
All right. Well, I guess if you ever fall in love with a girl, you should also despise her and mistrust her.
Not despise her and mistrust her.
Look for evidence.
Yes, look for evidence.
Yeah, I'm not going to distrust her.
Be like, I might be massively in love with you and fawning at your feet, but by golly, I want more evidence before I go and buy you another steak dinner.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
In fact, you should be buying me a steak dinner because I don't trust you yet.
No. You sound like someone who meets someone like you could. It's another scam again. There's plenty of people that get scammed by like someone online that pretend to be a girl and fall in love with them, and then send them money, or even like spend tons of money and they lose it. And find evidence. Find evidence before you invest in any relationship. Don't just base it on ideology. And the problem is that you add more value to someone with a belief, a Christian belief especially, than anyone else. And that's a problem, because you could end up in a situation where you think someone is trustworthy because they're Christian or have this belief, and they end up being not trustworthy.
Christian belief, who I see right through in a heartbeat. Like I wouldn't trust Ted Cruz with a potted plant. I know this may sound horrendous, but that the U.S. senator from Texas, I would literally, if he was the last person in my neighborhood who could watch my potted plant when I went on like a 2-month vacation, it wouldn't be him.
This is something we can both agree on, but we also get examples where theists will tell us that God can never lie. And I always want to be like, oh, sweetheart, I'm pretty sure anyone that's telling you they can never lie. I understand what you mean when, you look at your wife and that you see that she's amazing and the most beautiful human being ever, but that doesn't have to be a supernatural thing.
Well, thank you very much. You probably just.
Well, I mean, I've asked questions of people who are very religious that they've kind of shaken their head for a second, where I've said things like, okay, so you talk to God, and they say yes, and I said, so what color shoes does he wear? And they'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, if you've spoken with him, then you've seen what he looks like. How tall is he? Is he about 5'2"? Is he 6'1"? Is he slender? Has he got a full build? Does he have a bit of a pot belly? And they're stuck. They're like, I just I don't see that. Well, so then what do you say? And they're like, Well, I don't see him at all. Well, you're talking to him, so then what is he? Is he speaking in a deep tone of voice? Is he got a high pitched voice? Is he more of like a soprano, or is he more alto? You know, no, they don't even say he's got an intonation to his voice. So it's like, so it can be challenging. Some of these things can be difficult to express, but I honestly have seen people who just have it. They would literally give you everything they've got, shirt off their back, because they believe, and they just have it.
Thanks for joining us. I guess that might count as your final words, or did you have some last thing you wanted to say to us before we start wrapping up the show?
And TJ, I love the new look. The Xerxes thing was old. I like it, man. You're doing great.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. I guess that was an interesting last conversation. Did anybody have anything that they wanted to say before we start wrapping up?
Look into the credentials of anyone that you trust your kids with thoroughly. I think that was a very good takeaway from this.
Oh yeah, definitely. It seems that the idea with having faith in the church has been kind of like a big flag for the people who want the access to children and in an unquestioned way. And so, you know, the church probably left the door open, so to speak, for almost inviting this, perhaps unwittingly in the beginning. And it's quite telling, I think, when you see the church now that are trying to move their accused clergy out of the jurisdictional reach of the law, and instead of cooperating with the law. And that tells me that the problem's gotten really, really bad. And we take a look now, and we see even George Pell, very high up in the church, got convicted, and then it got overturned by their Supreme Court in Australia shortly after that. Very strange dealings. But they've demonstrated, in my view, that they're not trustworthy.
Also, I don't know if anyone caught that, but his example, he seemed to imply at the end that it didn't work out, and thus not even he has a time where giving confidence to someone with an in-group is going to give you a higher chance that they are gonna not scam you.
That's a good point. Anybody have any final thoughts?
Join the atheist church.
Yeah, the atheist church is an important effort that TJump is running. There are some links to it on the theisthelpline.com website. If you click on about, you'll find TJump's entries in there. You can click on his picture. It'll bring you right to his links, as well as links for all the rest of us. Thank you for doing that, TJump. That's an important cause, and I hope it turns into a wildly successful effort down the road for you.
Absolutely, and hopefully you guys have the opportunity to start one in Canada too. It'll be awesome.
Oh yeah, we need funding, and then we would be happy to do that. I would like to get enough funding to start a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week soup kitchen kind of arrangement as part of it as well, so that people who are really destitute will be able to have good nourishment, because I think that would also be helpful. And providing the food without any additional books as required reading. I think you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, sure. I think that's why we're trying to do the apartment building first, because that'll provide us a substantial amount of monthly income, which we can then use for other endeavors like food shelters and church facilities and other kinds of things. So because we don't, as atheists, we don't have like a large congregation who's going to give us donations all the time. Getting a stable foundational income like an apartment building will allow us to provide funding like food shelters and things.
Yes, yeah, having a facility like that, you'd be able to do stuff on the ground floor. I don't think people really want to live on the front street on the ground floor anyway. They want to have a little more privacy, so this can work very, very well. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful idea, and I think this kind of thing needs to be encouraged more. X, did you have any final thoughts for today's show?
Just I'm gonna watch the the TJump video on Pascal's wager because I haven't heard it gone into as much depth as he did today, and that was fun. So looking forward to that.
Great. Mobarak, any final thoughts?
Yeah, the show today was fun. I would like you to join us next Thursday, the 11th, on Gonna Go For It, and to join us on the show there, gonna be at p.m. Eastern. So adjust your time properly. But I have final quote that have been bringing in my mind all the show. It's potatoes, boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. So for some reason, I don't know why, but it's been bringing in my mind. Maybe it's our holy.
Maybe it was just
talking to me.
A bout of faith in TJump's magic potato.
I think so.
Overcame you. So it's the spirit of the magic potato.
It is. It is.
He's
So
had
thank you
personal
all, and-
revelation.
I think so. I might be a prophet. I think there's a history in Middle Eastern prophets. So, I enjoyed it.
Here first, folks.
Thank you, Mobarak. Tonight, I will be probably on another live stream on my channel. We're just trying to work out some final details. It'll be a Twitter Spaces stream that a gentleman named The Duke is the Man will be hosting. It'll be about atheism, and we're going to see where it goes. So hopefully it will bring in a different audience through the Twitter Spaces. If people want to find me on Twitter, my account there is Randolf828. That's RANDOLF, or you can find it through the Theist Helpline website in the About section. Amy, did you have any final thoughts?
Sure. I just wanted to talk about how numerous theists seem to deal with this version of consciousness. That I think that although just like abiogenesis and numerous other subjects, they are the newest that we are learning in fields like biology. However, they are still not only well substantiated in neurobiology and neurology, but they are going to continue gaining more information. And every time that we have found something dealing with consciousness, it has been a physical form. And so I would be interested in someone presenting to me or any atheist why there would need to be this version of consciousness that really is not attached to a brain, a body. They've been floating around not only in time and space, but before time and space. It's not something we see with any physical laws. And so I just want to thank Taco Randolph for another fantastic stream, the entire panel. You can find me and my co-host James W. at youtube.com/Amy Newman. And I just want to remind everyone that if you do not convert now, because now you have knowledge, to the potato, that the fryer is waiting for you at the end. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amy. Taco, you're the organizer. What are your final thoughts here before we close up?
Everyone's links, they're pinned in Heathen Hangout. If you're watching on a platform that's not Discord, join politics.discord. Hang on.
That would be politics.gg. Sorry, that would be discord.gg/politics.
Yes, join that. Thank you for watching, though, and everyone have a great day. Am I good to close this out, or anyone want to say anything?
Just want to say a special thank you to our sponsors, the Discord Politics Guild, the link you just mentioned, and then the Canadian Atheists at canadianatheists.ca, and also, again, another special mention for TJump's amazing effort to help people with what he's calling the atheist church. All worthy things to look into. Again, the links you can find on the theisthelpline.com website as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our audiences. We appreciate everybody for tuning into this and participating, and in the live text chats, as well as engaging with us here on the stage. It is always greatly appreciated.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.